I call this meeting of the Iowa State Student Government Senate to order at 6 p.m. on April 27th, 2022. We'll now move into a roll call. Senator Agba. Senator Becker. Vice Speaker Bruick.
Present.
Senator Burks. Senator Chu. Senator Dre. Senator Eisma. Senator Engelken. Senator Frencher. Hackbarth. Holliday. Hirsch. Kohlhaas. Hewler. Magallanes. Mays. Mascar. Alexandra. Montalvo Martinez. Patel. Peterson. Schnepf. Shivrov. Slade. Slater. Pansy. Thornton. Kopate. Sorry. Bo. And Yonting. With that, we have quorum. We'll now move into the Pledge of Allegiance with Acting Speaker Bruick.
Pledge allegiance. Flag. Republic. God. Justice.
So we will now be moving into our first program of the night, which is an update from Student Legal Services. I'm not sure if, if you want to approach the podium, do you have any slides or anything, or just, okay, yeah. So while we get that set up, just as a reminder for senators, new and old, during open forum, or during programs, it is requested that you close your laptops.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for your technical expertise. I wouldn't have known how to do that here. So good to be with all of you tonight. Thank you for your service in student government. It's an incredibly important aspect of university life and what we do throughout the university. And I know it's a sacrifice for all of you, the time and energy you put into it. So I want to thank you all. And thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk about student legal services. I'm Michael Levine. I'm one of the attorneys at Student Legal Services. We have 2 attorneys, and Debbie Carter is our office coordinator. Most of you, or at least certainly a good percentage of you, have probably been to our office and seen what goes on there. We're in the lower level of the MU, 0367. We've been in that office. This will kind of tie into later on to what you're going to be voting on tonight. We've been in that office going on 27 to 28 years. So one of the reasons we have this before you, the bill for funding, additional funding for the rent, is we're moving upstairs. After that many years, we've, of course, outgrown the space. It was pretty tight space to begin with, for those of you who've been there. You know, we don't have a conference room. We don't have much space for students to even sit. It's very difficult when you have more than one student to meet with, because we have to do that pretty much in a small, the attorney's small offices. So I'll be happy to entertain any questions any of you have with respect to the space itself. But giving you a little background on what Student Legal Services is, it's been around since, excuse me, since /85. It started out in 1985 with 1 attorney and a part-time secretary/receptionist. That individual was also the secretary/receptionist for student government. At that time, the office was located in room 15, which you won't find anymore because it's long gone. Room 15 was down near the underground, the bowling alley, and that was removed when all the remodeling was done. I forget, many years ago, when they added the new addition for the bookstore and the ground level. So in 1990, Student Legal Services expanded to 2 attorneys. That was the work of the Senate. The Senate approved that. Student government thought that it was time to bring in another attorney. And in fact, at that time, the 2 attorneys were brought on board. It was myself and the other attorney is Paul Johnson. And some of you may be familiar with Paul. We continued with the same office manager until 1999 when Debbie came aboard. So, as I say, we spent a year downstairs, our first year in 1990. Then we moved up to what was then known as room 129, which is across from lectures down here. At that time, there was a barber shop kind of on the corner where the post office is now, and there were other offices in there. And that was a really desirable space, but it was first floor. And although we didn't have any windows, we could go outside and look at the Campanile through the Colonel Pride room, which was wonderful. Downstairs, of course, we don't have any windows. We can walk out the hallway to the south side and see some daylight. So that's been the saving grace, at least. So I think it was 94, if memory serves. We were there for about 3 years, and then we moved downstairs. And that space downstairs, most of you are not likely to know, was where sorority and fraternity engagement is now, and where student legal services is now. That space was all pool tables. It was one gigantic room filled with multiple pool tables. And so that space was converted into office space. And that's where we've been now for 27 plus years. So what do we do at Student Legal Services? We see students, consult with students, represent students on a variety of issues, and that is what, excuse me, is so compelling about the job, frankly. The variety is endless. I like to say that it literally goes from A to Z, Z being zoning and A being administrative cases, and just about everything in between. So civil rights, consumer issues, criminal law, employment law, labor, expungement of criminal cases, family law, immigration, excuse me, landlord-tenant, victim assistance, and of course we provide notary services. The, excuse me, with this mask, my mouth is just so dry. With the bulk of the cases that we handle are pretty much, generally on average over the years, I would say about 50% of it is criminal and housing, landlord-tenant combined, and everything else is kind of what you see up there. So there we are. That's me in the middle, Paul and Deb, and we can go to the next one. How does Student Legal Services help students? Why are we here? There's 5 good reasons right there. Students away from home for the first time in particular certainly may not have had any experience with contracts, any experience with solving any kind of dispute between them and another outside party. So first and foremost, we can advise students of what their rights are, what their legal rights are, and that helps protect those rights. And with the knowledge and information that we can give students, they can make much better informed decisions. Also, when we represent students and counsel them, we save them money, lots and lots of money. Legal fees are quite high these days. And so having the ability to help students save money, to devote those resources to their education and their other obligations, the financial obligations, is quite impactful. So that just gives you kind of a breakdown of how some of our criminal cases work. I won't go into the details of that. I'll save you the details if you want that. There's housing cases, and the pie chart will demonstrate the majority of that is landlord-tenant. And of course, we do multiple traffic and automobile issues. There's a brief summary of what we don't do, what we can't do. With the limited staff that we have, we don't do felony representation. We generally don't take cases outside of Story County because of time. And we don't do student against student matters or student against the university for obvious reasons. So that's where we are. Happy to answer any questions you have about the service in general. But in particular, if you have questions about the bill, I'll stick around. as you get into a discussion about that, in case you have questions that relate to the bill that's going to be before you tonight.
Acting Speaker Brewick?
Hi, thank you so much for coming in, both for your bill and for this program. You know, I think student legal is a great thing that we're able to provide. It's a great service. I just had a couple questions about maybe more of the details of your of what you guys do. So one thing I wanted to kind of ask is like, so you guys, when you're representing students in cases that you're able to take, you are their attorney. You're going to be the one appearing for them in there when they're going before the court and whatnot, right? That's like you're properly their attorney. There's that relationship there.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Sure.
Sure thing. And then I don't know how much you can get into it, especially because I know you're not necessarily operating this way, but could you give us a little insight on maybe the specifics of the money you're saving students? I know legal costs are high, but I think it's kind of hard to put into really solid numbers. So if you had any insight to that, I think we'd appreciate that.
I don't know if I can give you a solid number, but most private practitioners will be charging around $250 an hour. $200 to $250 an hour, even in Ames today. And that pales in comparison to what you would have to pay even in a larger city. So if it's a case that's by the hour, which is pretty much these kind of cases, we don't do, for example, we don't do fee-generating cases. And what is a fee-generating case? Excuse me, yeah, my throat is hoarse today. Fee-generating case is a case like an automobile collision where there's some liability that could be ascribed to one party or another, some negligence that caused personal injury to someone. And if there's auto insurance involved, typically liability insurance, things of that nature, there's a fund out of which payment of damages can be sustained or secured. So that's what we would call a fee-generating case. And in those cases, attorneys take those, for the most part, on a percentage basis. They don't charge by the hour because there's money in the form of insurance that can compensate the injured party if need be. But that's very limited. Most, most kinds of cases are not fee-generating cases, so you'd be paying pretty much by the hour. And those numbers are can add up pretty quick. If 4 hours of work can be $1,000. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think those are really great, helpful answers. And I just want to say I really think that this is one of the best services that we as student government provide. I mean, being in legal jeopardy is incredibly, fear-generating. It's an incredibly intimidating reality. So I'm glad we can provide this service to students. With that, I yield.
If I could just add something to my comment there. We kind of skimmed over the first slide, but two key words in the very first slide I think you'll see. Yeah, actually, it's on the title page. Free and confidential. So it's free in the sense that we don't charge students anything. Of course, it's by providing the service. Student government is paying the money because you're paying for our supplies, our rent, our salaries, etc. But so in that sense, nothing's free, right? But as far as for the students itself, there's no fee. We will consult with them on pretty much any matter that comes up.
Acting Vice Speaker Emmy or Thornton.
Thank you again for coming. My question is about how to advise students when you are unable to help with their case. Are you already, or would you be likely to create a guide for how to find a good or trustworthy lawyer, either for students whose case you can't pick up, or for students who are graduating, or maybe alumni?
That's a great question, and a partial answer is that there is an answer through the State Bar Association. the Iowa State Bar Association, which is the lawyers' professional organization at Iowa, it's iowabar.org, provides many resources for the public on their website, including a lawyer referral service. It's a lawyer referral service. It used to be called that. Now it's actually called Find a Lawyer. And on that site, you can search for, you can search by, and filter your search by city, by type of law, and it covers pretty much everything we can think of in the law to cover as far as the type of problem a person might be having. And that program, there is a cost to it. It's $25 for a half-hour consultation. And, excuse me, it's $25 or less. And many attorneys don't even charge the $25. So you can filter it by city, by type of law. You can see the attorney's profile, their experience, the types of cases that they handle. All of that is available through the Bar Association website. And we, of course, utilize that and tell the students that, and often they'll want a referral of someone in the community who we know, and we're happy to make those referrals as well. So, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you bet.
Senator Patel?
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for your service and just helping students, like from the whole student body, for free and confidential legal services. And thank you.
Thank you. It's our pleasure, really. It's we're privileged. We're just really lucky. As you can tell, Paul and I have been here for quite a long time, and colleagues, friends, family, people ask us all the time, you know, are you still there, Student Legal Services, and what are you doing there? And we just have to explain to them it's a wonderful place to be. You know, I mean, there's basically maybe 4 or 5 of these jobs in the entire state of Iowa. The University of Iowa has a student legal service program. I think not sure, I know they've had some turnover there, but I think they now have a 3rd attorney. I don't know if it's full-time, part-time. But Paul and I are the only ones here for, you know, this student body and over in Iowa City. And like I said, it's the variety that you just don't know from one day to the next what's going to walk in the door. And when I mentioned A to Z, the A has been asylum. And, you know, I remember the first political asylum case that I consulted on and represented the student on involved a country in Africa where the government that was in power at the time the student came to Iowa State on a foreign student visa, that government, which was essentially funding the student's education here, that government was overthrown. And the student and the student's family was in considerable danger, as were many others that supported and have been a part of and were supported by the current regime at that time. Well, you can only imagine the stress and anxiety that kind of situation will create for a student who's thousands of miles away in the middle of the United States and worried about their family, their funding, their government, their home. It can be terrifying. So, and that's just one example. We've had many of those examples over the years. So you would think that, you know, coming to work in Iowa, middle of the country, you're passing cornfields and soybeans and everything, but the world is so connected now, and it's been that way for decades, but it really comes home to you when you represent a student in that kind of a situation, and you think, how did I fall into this? That, I could be representing someone in an immigration matter who's having this kind of a problem, that it doesn't get much more serious than that. And so asylum to zoning, and literally everything in between. The zoning part is, years ago, there was a lot of controversy here about over-occupancy issues in rental properties and in high-density areas. And the zoning, it really had to do with zoning and the city council and what kind of restrictions they would put on how many people could live in a certain building in a certain part of Ames, because there has to be a certain amount of off-street parking to accommodate, the number of residents and guests and things like that. So, and we were involved in a lot of that as well, with students having a lot of questions about, can they live there? How many people can live there? What if we do this? What if we do that? So we just get consulted about such a variety of issues. It keeps you fresh, it keeps you on your toes, and it's a real delight. And students, of course, we're privileged to work with students, great students here at Iowa State.
Senator Keeler?
Hello. So I guess my question is, on one of the slides you mentioned cases you don't cover, and one of them was one of the bullet points was listed as cases with excessive time. So I was just curious if you could maybe elaborate on that, and I guess, how do you guys determine if a case is time consuming?
Well, a good example would be a child custody case. A family law case that involves a lot of disputes about between the parties in terms of physical care, joint legal custody, joint physical care, who should be the primary parent and caretaker, and who shouldn't. And you get into a lot of issues with that kind of thing. It takes a lot of time. Generally, it would involve experts, psychologists, and others that are involved in the child's life and who can render opinions as to what might be in the quote-unquote best interest of the child, because that's the test for the court to decide. So those cases could go on for, a better part of a year. And one of the things we have to look to is, we might be working with a senior who's coming in late fall or early spring, and they're graduating in May. And we represent students, and the case is going to have a lifespan beyond the time that they're even going to be here as a student.
Okay, thank you. And then just a follow-up question. If you do turn a student away if they have excessive time, what options would they have potentially if Student Legal Services is unable to assist them?
Well, in addition to the Bar Association referral program that I mentioned, and that's the way that program works is the first half hour is $25 or less. Beyond that, the student and the attorney may negotiate what the student can afford to pay. So it might not be that $250 an hour. Maybe the attorney's willing to take it on for $100 an hour or $75 an hour. But and many attorneys will give students some discounts, particularly when there's going to be a lot of hours involved in the job. But in addition to that, Story County has a legal aid office. Most students aren't. Let me put it this way: there's a good chance that many students who need legal services will qualify financially for legal aid. So there's Story County legal aid, and beyond that, there's Iowa legal aid, which is statewide legal aid office.
Okay, thank you for that. And I just want to give my official support. I think this is an excellent use of student fee dollars, and I definitely support student legal services. And with that, I yield.
Senator Eisma?
Hi there. I just had a question regarding, you say that with the new space, would there be would there be opportunity for possibly a third attorney for Iowa State students?
You know, that is a really great question. And as it's presently configured, and the remodeling that's taken place so far, you know, with the walls being where they are and the conference room being where it is and stuff like that, I think it would be difficult, quite frankly. The conference room that we're talking about is a shared conference room with in-core S-core that's going to be up there, and lectures, and whoever else is going to be on the 6th floor. It's not our conference room. In fact, that's pretty much what one of the main reason for the bill tonight is the additional charge that's being levied for that. So I don't know where you would put the third attorney unless you started, because we you know, downstairs we've never had a storage room. You know, those of you that have been in my office or Paul's office know that I've got 3, you know, 5-drawer file cabinets that kind of frame me in at the desk. Paul's got 1 large one and 2 small ones. Debbie has 2 in her outer office. And we're finally going to have a storage room, but the storage room has, the space for that was cut back. I don't really know why. Oh, I do know why. I think what they did was they made kind of a communal bathroom up there and decided to add a sink and a counter outside of the bathroom for everyone's use, excuse me, which is great. But it cut down on the storage space that we thought we were going to get. So now we have even less than what we initially thought when the first planning was undertaken. So I just don't know where that third office could be, quite frankly.
Thank you for that. That'll be all. I yield.
Is there any further questions for or comments for our speaker or presenter tonight? All right, thank you for coming in.
You bet. Do you want me to stick around, or you guys want to let me go, or what do you think? Are you going to have any, there might be questions. Okay. Oh, okay, great. Just in case, I'm happy to do it. There's one man. Try to talk with this on, it makes your voice really sketchy. It makes Brooks look dry.
All right. Let's thank Eddie for chairing the meeting. I was running late for a class. He did a wonderful job, I assume. And thank you, Student Legal Services, for that update. We'll now turn the podium over to President Ludwig for his State of the Student Body address.
Yeah, and before I get started, if we could just give another hand to Student Legal for their amazing work. Student Legal, and particularly in this form, is a program that's fairly unique around the country. There aren't a lot of other universities that have a free student legal free student legal service like we have, and Iowa State was one of the first universities in the country to pioneer this. So this is another one of the very unique programs that we offer at our university that makes Iowa State such a special place. But without further ado, we'll get started. If we want to go to the second slide, I just have some brief opening remarks, and then we'll kind of take down the formality a little bit and talk a little bit about details. But first, Iowa State is at a pivotal moment in our university's history. As we finish emerging from the pandemic, we are coming out on the other side with a better understanding of who we are and where we need to go as a community. That understanding is being accompanied by a great deal of change on our campus. Change can be frightening, especially when we don't know the new path we are charting. But I know that this community can handle it. Last week, ISU concluded its membership in the AAU, the American Association of Universities, after determining that the association's priorities no longer aligned with our university's goals. Over the next year, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences will be taking forward-looking steps to reshape our campus's second largest college to better serve the university, the state of Iowa, and the students who go here. And additionally, the university is about to embark on implementing its newly established 9-year strategic plan to build a campus that better reflects our values and priorities. Not everyone is happy with all of these changes and developments. I know that. But I think the Iowa State spirit calls on each of us to see these changes as an opportunity to reinvent this university, to decide what being a Cyclone means in this upcoming decade. Many of us in this room came to this university during the Choose Your Adventure campaign. That campaign centered on the idea that Iowa State could be a place that can take you where you want to go. Similarly, I see the next couple of years as an opportunity to take this university where we want it to go. While the faculty and administration tend to the academic and strategic priorities of the university, it's our job to tend to the students and to the community we have on campus. Vice President Ulrich and myself see numerous areas for advancement over the next couple of years, from food insecurity to mental health resources to right-siding student government's budget. There's plenty of work to do and less time to do it than many of you may think. I will speak about these areas of focus, and then we'll take a couple questions. So if we want to go to the next slide. So objectives for the next year, you can go again. First area is mental health. This is really going to require a whole of community approach. First up, Vice President Ulrich and myself want to reestablish the Health and Wellness Committee within student government. This was something that had existed for a number of years and had been disbanded the last 2 years. And so this is something we want to bring back, especially considering some of the larger health and wellness priorities that we're going to have over the next year. Additionally, we want to establish connections between the city, university, and student government to find areas of cooperation for in the area of mental health. Mayor Hala has already talked to me about sitting down and having those conversations. That is we kind of want to expand those conversations to also include Brian Vaderhaden from Student Wellness to talk about areas for collaboration. Mental health isn't just a problem on this campus, it's been a problem in the community and throughout Iowa as a whole. We are in something of a mental health resource desert, and so we really want to make sure that, as we're finding solutions, we are doing so with as many partners as possible so that we can find the greatest amount of resources possible. So I know that there are priorities that the university has had over the last couple of years to gain additional funding from the state. That's something where we'd like to maybe partner with the city and then figure out where programs can overlap and funding can support each and every one. Additionally, we want to promote Qpr training in the fall. I think this is something that you've heard a little bit of talk about, but we recently received a grant from the federal government to give every ISU student Qpr training on this campus for free. This is a quick 30-minute suicide prevention training that I think is going to be very important. It gives people the bare minimum, knowledge to assist a friend who might be in need. And I think this is a real opportunity for us to provide that training to as many students as possible. It's going to be a rather difficult uphill fight, I believe. Obviously, it's always hard to engage students on this campus. The number one problem that not just student government, but every organization on this campus faces is outreach and communication. there are just too many organizations trying to get a single student's attention at any given time, and that poses an immense challenge, especially when there are very important resources that we're trying to get in front of students. Obviously that challenge exists, but that just means we're going to have to work harder and work more to get resources to students. And then lastly, something that has come up in conversations these last couple weeks is Reevaluating the Tao App. For those of you who don't know, Tao is a free mental health resource app that student government has been funding for the last 3 years. It has been something that I think we spend about $30,000 a year funding the subscription fee so that every student in Iowa State can use this app. We've gotten kind of mixed numbers over the years from Health and Wellness Services on the usage rates, and so something that we want to look into in the next year is, is there a better way that we can promote the Tao app so that students can have those mental health resources available to them, or is there a better way that we can invest that $30,000 to support students in the community? And then at the bottom of each of these slides, I tried to include at least one cabinet contact. A lot of these projects will involve more cabinet directors than just the ones mentioned, but at the bottom of each slide should be just at least one person you can reach out to about these projects. You can go to the next slide. Food insecurity is another big area for us. With 1/3 of ISU students being food insecure, and that's gone up 8% over the last 2 years. This is a huge priority for Vice President Ulrich and myself. And so we want to ensure that, we are making sure that students can focus on their classes rather than trying to find food. And so we want to continue further funding SHOP on this campus. I know that Vice Speaker Bruick has talked about reforming some of our rules to make it easier for SHOP to get funding from student government, and that's something that we're interested in pursuing as well. We also want to ensure that SHOP receives asset support. This last year, the previous administration worked to get SHOP on the path to potentially become an asset program, and that would receive funding from not only us, but the City of Ames, the university, and United Way. And so that's an additional way that we want to work to support them. And so as they kind of go through that process next year, we want to provide whatever level of support, logistic or informational, that they need. And then additionally, just continuing to work with campus partners to support other avenues like SNAP. SNAP or food stamps is a program that a lot of students are eligible for but don't use. And so expanding education about that program and how students can better engage with it and get access to cheap, healthy, and affordable food is something that I think that we need to focus on in this next year, because 1/3 of ISU students not having adequate access to food is unacceptable. Oh, there we go. In terms of violence prevention, this comes down to a couple key things. We want to continue promoting resources for sexual assault survivors and other people who have been victims of violence in our community, make sure that they are aware of the resources that are available. I know that the Iowa State Daily is going to be doing some work over the next year to promote the Green Dot program. Additionally, we want to continue to promote that program on our end, make sure that not only is it something that students are aware of, but make sure that it is properly funded and that there are the resources behind it to achieve its objectives. Something that Jaden and I talked a lot about during the campaign was that other universities have a significantly higher level of violence prevention funding. The University of Iowa has had 3 people working full-time on violence prevention for the last couple of years, and we only have 1 person working half-time. I understand that the university is potentially taking some steps in the next year or so to change some of that, and that's something that we intend to work with them on and make sure that continues to remain a priority in their budgeting process. Additionally, we want to promote the Guardian app. This is something that the university has had for some time now, that ISU PD has promoted a lot, but there's definitely some opportunities for us to continue engaging members of the community, especially new and incoming students, with this program to ensure that students get home safe. And this is a really easy thing that students can do to increase safety in their lives and make sure that their friends and family know they're getting home safe. And so it's something that we want to continue to push over the course of this next year. And then student government's budget. This has been an ongoing conversation, especially over the last couple of weeks. I think that, I've obviously established the Budget Review Task Force that will continue to some of the conversations that we've been having, review our contracts, review the annual allocations process that we have in student government and our priorities and criteria, and make sure that those things align as perfectly as possible with student priorities. So we want to go out and get student feedback on what they actually want to see from this, from student government in terms of funding, what they want to see on this campus from other fees that are out there. So if I personally am not in favor of raising student fees over this next year, but if there's a need and if students have a desire for maintained services or new services, then that's a conversation we're going to have. We obviously cannot expand services or even maintain some current services without raising fees. And so that's something that I really want this committee and task force to look into, is to find out, is this something that students actually want? Because obviously, while I may hold a certain position, I know that a lot of students in this room and a lot of you hold certain positions on whether or not fees should be increased or allocated in certain directions. I think it's really important that we act from a point of knowledge and act based off data that's actually accurate rather than our intuition. And so that's a large thing that the Budget Task Force will focus on over this next year, and then hopefully deliver towards the middle or late fall semester a report with a series of recommendations for student government, hopefully with time to take into account the priorities and criteria document that will be approved at the end of the fall semester, and maybe result in some conversations with the fee committee. In terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is something where there are certain projects that we came in with, but there are also a lot of things ongoing. So a lot of what's the 3 specific projects on the screen right now are things that Vice President Ulrich and myself ran on. But we understand that the DEI committee has a lot of things left over from last year, and we're really excited for our newly appointed director, although not yet confirmed, to take the lead on some of those projects, and also our nominated director for international student experience to also take the lead on some of these things. These areas, center around promoting and expanding international student career service support. As I've talked about probably dozens of times now, international students face a lot of career service challenges that domestic students don't. And I think achieving parity and equity in that space is really important, especially if you want more international students to come to Iowa State. Then we need to make sure that, especially for them, when they are paying so much of a higher price to be here, that they have at least the same level of support that domestic students are receiving. Additionally, expanding religious holiday protections for students who come from different cultural backgrounds, ensuring that religious holidays don't restrain you from partaking in your academics, or your academics don't restrain you from partaking in your religious beliefs. I know that this has been a conversation ongoing about Muslim students and Ramadan over the past couple of years, and ensuring that they are able to freely celebrate their holiday without being hindered by classes and homework and exams. This is something that Vice President Ulrich and myself have talked about with Senior Vice President Dr. Toria Younger, and our newly appointed Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at the university. And so we want to work on educating professors, and then also seeing what protections, if any, we can get students to make sure that they can move exams or homework assignments when they have a religious holiday coming up, if it conflicts with those things. And then additionally, we just want to continue, not continue, but expand, the ways in which student government works with marginalized communities. Over this last year, we've had, increased contact specifically with international students and the International Student Council. And that's been really valuable for student government in terms of learning how we can better support that community. I've been in on the monthly meetings that the previous exec team had with ISC leadership, and that's something that I really think it's important that we replicate with other marginalized communities at Iowa State. We cannot represent facets of this university if we're not talking to them, if we're not reaching out to these communities and making a point of engaging with them on the issues that they're facing. And so that is something that I would like to replicate, and that I think Vice President Ulrich and myself are both intent on replicating with other communities throughout Iowa State. And then, lastly, I think this is last, sustainability. There's a number of sustainable projects and initiatives that we want to go through over this next year. Doubling the Green Initiatives Fund is up first. You're actually going to see a bill to do that later tonight. This will I guess just to prelude that conversation, I think this is a very easy thing that we can do to provide greater support and flexibility to sustainable efforts on campus. The last couple of years, we've actually not ended up using the Green Initiatives account because the projects that we've been rolling through have exceeded the account value by so much that we've just gone to special projects, which is our largest reserve account. And so it's kind of rendered the account pointless. And so we want to double the account's value from 15 to 30,000, which better reflects some of the spending that we've done over the last couple of years. And the way this is done actually doesn't really increase guaranteed costs unless the money is available. So the account balance only exists if we have money in special projects to put into it. So it's essentially budget neutral and reflects some of the sustainable efforts that we've been funding over the last couple of years. And so I think this is a really easy way for us to just provide greater flexibility in that arena specifically. We additionally want to continue supporting the expansion of SciRide's electric bus fleet. Finance Director Claiborne and myself actually just came from the SciRide board meeting earlier this afternoon, where we approved an agency request to apply for an additional electric bus grant, which, if approved, would, by the end of that grant being achieved, would expand our electric bus fleet to 12 buses, which it's important to recognize that 2 years ago we didn't have any electric buses. So this has been, over the past couple of years, we've had a lot of great opportunities to expand that fleet, and we are continuing to work through those grants and find more opportunities to expand the electric bus fleet here. And then lastly, expanding Iowa State's composting program in terms of access and scope. Over the last year, there have been a lot of conversations about additional drop sites and educational materials. We're hoping to turn some of those conversations into results over the next year and make sure that, we have adequate infrastructure and adequate education in the community so that everyone can engage with the composting program, understands how they can do that so that we can all reduce our food waste in the community and, invest in a greener campus. So I believe that's the last area. And so I just have some brief closing comments. Vice President Ulrich and myself present this agenda to you as a roadmap for empowering students on this campus. We are very confident that student government can make a meaningful and impactful progress in all of these areas, but we do have to work together. While these objectives may be, coming from our administration, we have no intention of moving forward alone. Each of these projects will require a whole of student government approach, and I call on each and every one of you to identify the projects that you care about, or are most interested to work on, and to join us in working on these issues. Our cabinet members are ready and willing to work with you on any and all of these objectives. We can't do this alone, but I honestly, truly believe that together, if we work together, we can achieve much. So thank you, roll clones, and I will take your questions.
All right, thank you. We will start off with Speaker Mahoney.
So obviously a lot of us were elected on some of our own projects and some of our own platforms and own initiatives and goals. Is there room for us to work on our own stuff with the help of cabinet and with the help of the executive branch? Yeah, of course. We've already been sitting down with our cabinet directors and identifying goals outside of the things that Jaden and I specifically ran on. Hopefully in the next week or so, we'll actually be able to, publish a kind of more detailed length of health and wellness objectives. And so that's, those are conversations that we want to invite all of you to be a part of as well. So if there's something specific that you want to see changed, and it corresponds with a specific cabinet post in our administration, let us know. And if it doesn't, still just go to Chief of Staff Roberts, or you can reach out to Vice President Ulrich or myself, and we are happy to find a way to support you in that project. We want, ideally, at the end of the year, everyone who ran to serve in this organization has achieved their platform objectives. And so that's something that, we're committed to supporting you through, supporting you on through the course of this year.
Senator Keeler.
As Speaker Mahoney mentioned, some of us were elected with specific projects in mind, and one of those for me was mental health. So I do like the idea of a health and wellness committee, and I guess I was just wondering if you could maybe elaborate on what the role of the health and wellness committee would look like.
Yeah, so the committee will play a supporting role for for the director specifically, you know, in some of the projects that they'll be tasked with. But I mean, generally just advocating for health and wellness resources at Iowa State and in the Iowa State community. So making sure that you know, students are aware of resources and that we are also, you know, forward-looking, working with partners in the community to identify new resources and avenues for support for students.
All right, thank you. I yield.
Senator Momini.
Hello. I would also like to touch on the mental health initiative. It's not so much of a question as it is a comment. Sorry. Seeking out mental health in itself can be kind of intimidating. Do you think that it would be, well, I think that it would be beneficial or maybe important to some people, people of color on campus to have more people of color in the mental health service industry, so that way when we go and step in, there's people who look like us and it's not so intimidating when you step into the office. Just a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, and that's something that I've definitely heard before from multiple individuals. And so I think, you know, as we start to have some of these conversations with specifically Brian Vanderhayden over in health and wellness, that's something that we'll definitely bring up and kind of put on their radar, that students are looking for, you know, more people of color in those jobs and positions. Yeah.
Vice Speaker Bruick.
Hi, President Ludwig. I just wanted to ask, I actually didn't want to touch on any necessarily of the slides you talked about, but there were a few things you brought up at the very beginning in your opening remarks that I kind of wanted to touch on. So, you know, forgive me if this isn't anything you necessarily prepared for or anything, if there were just a few passing references, but you talked about the university's withdrawal from the American Association of Universities and the Reimagining LAS initiative. And while I think that there's certainly some value to the framing that you gave of, you know, this is an opportunity for change, an opportunity for us to ask questions about what the university is going to look like, what it means to be a cyclone, I think there are some very serious concerns from, I've heard more concern from faculty in my conversations with them. They're probably more immediately concerned with budget cuts to their departments and withdrawals from major university associations. But I think there's a real, you know, concern for the impact that is being had on students from these decisions. It was my understanding that the withdrawal from the AAU was a complete blindsiding to the Faculty Senate, and Reimagining LAS has been done certainly with conversations with Faculty Senate, but not necessarily a conversation that's being heard, necessarily led by Faculty Senate, or, you know, necessarily being that's not necessarily the primary concern of the university administration. So I guess I wanted to ask you, given the way that these have kind of kicked off with just the university administration is doing this, you know, tough cookies, make the best out of it. How do you plan in your administration to, both for students and with our friends at the Faculty Senate that all obviously have some common goals with us, how do you plan to work to, you know, ensure that those decisions are being made to serve the university's students, you know, the people who are most impacted by and who most, you know, contribute to the existence of this university, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you plan to address that?
Yeah, and, you know, I can also briefly touch on both of those areas, because both, you know, leaving the AAU and Reimagine LAS. You know, when it comes to leaving the AAU, President's Council was just this last week, and so, you know, a portion of that meeting was set aside to talk about that decision. You know, it was something that was definitely more at the higher level end of the university. And it is, you know, I understand the immediate shock value can be pretty rough for some people, especially people in higher academics, you know, who maybe came to Iowa State because we were an AAU institution. But I think that the university ultimately was right in this decision. You know, the fact is that the AAU and their lobbying priorities just do not reflect Iowa State's interests. The AAU is primarily comprised of universities with medical colleges. And so when they talk about grant funding, you know, applications and all that jazz, they're talking about increasing funding for agencies that don't actually give grants to Iowa State, or at least not that many grants. We are not eligible for most, you know, a lot of the grant money that exists in the federal government, because most of it is designated for human health and human sciences. When we're sitting here and we're getting a lot of money from the USDA and from business and industry partners, that's where we get a lot of our grant funding and money to help run this university. That is not really factored in AAU priorities or membership qualifications. Over the last couple decades, as the AAU has shifted more towards supporting those priorities that better reflect universities that have human health schools and colleges, it's become we've become less and less similar to each of those institutions. And so I think, while it is maybe a sticker shock value, it's a tough decision, and the AAU has a long and I guess prestigious reputation. There wasn't a lot of practical value in remaining in the organization. And then with Reimagine LAS, that one's also very difficult. But Vice President Ulrich and myself sat down with the LAS Dean Schmidtman, this last week and talked about what's going to be happening. Obviously the budget cut percentages have been determined, but not the manner in which those cuts will happen. Those cuts are based, the budget targets have been determined based off of first major enrollment data, class enrollment data, and basically data on how much any of these departments are actually being used by students on this campus. And so no one is, advocating for any of these departments to go away, but there's just the sheer fact, a budgetary fact, that these departments are not being used in the same way that they were being used 10 years ago. And a lot of this has to do with the way that students coming into college come in with a lot of their prereqs done. LAS as a college typically provides a lot of the classes that might be considered prereqs or your kind of gen eds. And so, with students coming in with their English classes done or their math classes done, those are things that LAS no longer is teaching or not teaching as many students in, and so they don't receive as much funding from the university as they may have, 5 or 10 years ago. And so they're just raw figures that just are not, they're not deniable. But there are, departments in the college that are doing fantastic, like computer science, for instance, which has, continued to see a lot of growth. And so, across the board flat budget cut just wouldn't have been fair to some of those departments that have been seeing a lot of growth and have been seeing a lot of, expansion over these last couple of years. And so I think, this summer and fall, as the individual departments hold their retreats and their sessions on what exactly the steps are that they're going to take to meet these budget targets, I think there will be some opportunity potentially for student input. No one is going to not be able to finish their degree at this university as long as if a program were to be eliminated, the college will keep certain classes around or provide alternatives for each and every student to finish their degree if a program were to be ended. So as long as you finish within the next 6 to 8 years, you should be fine. They're cognizant of some of the concerns, and I think they're doing a lot of work to mitigate some of those things. And then, in terms of working with university and faculty partners to make sure that they are, included in things and that, students are included in things, we will continue to stress to administrators that we want students to have a voice in as many decisions as possible. Obviously, there's some things where there isn't that much room to budge, but making sure that students are at least aware of the circumstances and reasoning for decisions can be very important. Leaving the AAU was a very sudden thing that was decided by upper administration. There's a case to be made that they could have communicated more, but I think once it came down to the fact that we were going to leave, I think that's a very simple decision, regardless of maybe how it was communicated. So does that answer your question? I'm sorry, I know I rambled there for about who knows how long.
Yeah, sure thing. I guess I would agree that I think, and personally I would say I would agree and would put forward the argument that there is much better communication that could have been done on some of these topics, but I guess that's not a problem for you. But I think we really should be aware of it and be concerned that that these are getting off on these kind of foots is certainly a thing we should be aware of and concerned about, and make sure that we're, holding the university accountable even where the decision is correct, of course. So that's my concern, and I think you answered it decently well for where we are and how it's not, even though it's really not our decision, I think you answered it well. So thank you, and I yield.
Senator Becker.
What would you say to professors planning to leave this university following the LAS budget cuts, and do you think they're justified in leaving?
If Iowa State University doesn't, align with your personal professional goals or objectives, or some of these cuts maybe just are too strong, I can respect that. I understand that. I don't think many people are happy about what's happening in LAS. I know the dean isn't excited to announce these budget cuts, but I don't think this is malicious. I think that this is something that the dean, the provost's office, and a lot of people stressed over a lot. And so I would encourage as many professors to stay. The hope is that no one has to be let go during this process, and that can be a very difficult thing. And a lot of professors will likely be shifted around, to do teach other classes or perform other research. And so I think that the things that make Iowa State a special place, and the things that the reasons that I came here and a lot of professors come here, are still true, regardless of the changes in LAS. And so I respect the fact that there are disagreements and unfortunate parts of this change, but I guess I would encourage people to hold true and believe that we can kind of chart a path forward. There have been other departments over the past couple of years who have had to take budget cuts, that have had to be reconsolidated, and they've found new paths forward. I believe it was our anthropology department got blended into the World Languages and Cultures department a couple years ago, and they're doing better than ever. It's understanding the fact that the college has to exist to serve current students, to serve prepare them for graduating in this year, not 10 years ago. And so that naturally means that there will be reorienting of priorities and services.
Second question, do you think there's long-term career impacts for holding a degree from a university that no longer has that program? Like, do you think that indicates a weakness of the university in that area?
Theoretically, sure. I mean, there might be some individuals out there or firms that would be looking for that distinction. But I can tell you, Provost Wickard told me a story. He worked at Carnegie Mellon for 10 years, was a dean of the engineering college here for several years as well. Researcher, did all that work, was a professor for a long time. Both institutions were AAU institutions. He didn't know until 2012 that he worked at AAU institutions, or what the AAU was. There are certainly those out there who care about that distinction, but I think if someone as highly involved and ranked in the university as our university provost didn't know or care about the fact that he was at an AAU institution, I think that shows that distinction maybe means less than people might make it out to be, and that I think it is more broadly associated with prestige than actual value.
Yeah, just to clarify, I meant like if I'm a poli-sci major and Iowa State no longer has a poli-sci program,
Yeah.
like now I'm using a degree that doesn't have a program backing it, do you think there's career impacts of that, regardless of whether it's a university that's a part of that association or not?
The degree still holds value. I don't think anyone's looking for, what the if you graduate with a poli-sci degree and 20 years from now you're employed somewhere, I don't think anyone's going to be looking to see what the poli-sci program is up to now. Your degree value is the same. And I'm not concerned that employers will look down on anyone for having been the last cohort out of a department. The rigor and the standards for the program remain the same, and they will not change through this process.
Thank you, I yield.
Senator Ogba.
Regarding budget cuts, I had been able to discuss with Mayor Ames, Mayor Hyla in regards to how we should go about this. And he had mentioned that in the past 10 years, about 50% of the department has lost about 10% or more tenured faculty staff. Do we have, with the encroaching budget cuts, do we have any plans in place for retaining these faculty? Do we have like any plans or upcoming meetings that can be attended or held in regards to discussing these issues with relevant departments?
Yeah, so let me just make sure I understand your question. You're asking first what the plan is for tenured professors?
Yes.
And then second, what kind of communication, if any, there might be between departments and students?
Yes.
Okay. For tenured professors, the department or the university and the college will not be taking any steps, as far as I'm aware, to remove any tenured professors. Like I said earlier, they will likely be cycled around to other programs and classes or research projects. And so as they naturally leave, those positions will just not be refilled. And then so far as communication, like I said, the departments are going to be working through various retreats and programs to kind of come up with plans. So I would encourage students to reach out to their department chairs to see what, if any, student input they would like in that process.
Thank you. I yield.
Are there any further questions for President Ludwig? Seeing none. Thank you, President Ludwig, for presenting tonight.
Thank you.
With that, we will move into open forum. Open forum shall serve as an opportunity for students to speak about the issues relevant to the student body. If you'd like to speak at open forum tonight, please approach the podium. Please say your name and major, and you'll have 10 minutes to speak. Is there anyone here for open forum tonight?
Hi, I am Joe Zuber. I am a computer engineering major in my junior year. Some of you may know me because I was on student government last semester. It was the grand finals, and Iowa State was down 3-0 in a best-of-7 series. If our fellow Cyclones lost this game, it was all over. In the first few minutes, ISU was able to score 2 points, but they were then put on the defensive by the other team, who had just scored a point of their own. Yet, with their backs against the wall, ISU's defense was able to hold on to win that game. And not just that game, but the next 3 games. When we clinched the victory, the crowd roared as the players leapt over to embrace each other. But this wasn't a long soccer match or any kind of sport you're likely used to seeing. Instead, it was our Overwatch team competing on behalf of our gaming and esports club. That game took place here on campus over the weekend during our yearly LAN event, and it was a big deal. The team we were up against was Grandview University. Grandview was the first university in the state of Iowa to fully fund their esports programs as if they were a part of their athletics department, something that we refer to as launching a varsity program. According to Grandview University's own website, each of their varsity players earn $2,000 to $28,000 a year on scholarships. They also have a fully funded coaching and management staff. Here at Iowa State, our club receives all of its funding from its student members and the generosity of you, the student government. That being said, however, the amount of funding that G&E receives compared to varsity programs like Grandview is fractions of a single percentage point. Early in the tournament bracket, we had lost to Grandview in a crushing 3-0 defeat. After that loss, 2 of our players were up until 2 a.m. watching the film of our loss, cooking up strategies and what they like to refer to as the lab. In the end, those strategies got us a new trophy. That's the kind of thing that makes competition competition. And it's the same kind of thing that legends are made out of. But I don't want to just recognize our Overwatch team. 4 of our League of Legends teams made playoffs in their respective leagues, and our League of Legends varsity team was seeded 14th out of 100 teams in the national tournament's North Conference. CSGO varsity reached playoffs in the inaugural Face It Collegiate Championship. Our Dota team placed 4th in CSL's varsity division. I am incredibly proud of all of these accomplishments. These students continue to inspire me every day, and that's why I'd like to recognize our club's graduating seniors. In Dota 2, Daniel Kummer, Ryan Nazars, Mohammed Roslin, and Isaac Lidler. And Overwatch, Eric Rush, and Andrew Spalding. I'd like to thank all of the officers and staff that helped to run gaming and esports. I'd also like to thank LAS and Rick Services for their support with the new gaming room in Bayer Hall. Our Discord server added nearly 500 members last fall, increasing our organization's reach by 30%. That's equivalent to roughly 11% of our freshman class being interested in what we do. Finally, on behalf of gaming and esports, I'd like to thank you, the student government, and that's why I'm here today. We could not have done it without you, for all of the funding that you've given our student organization. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here for open forum? Seeing none, we'll go into adopting tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to do so? Vice Speaker Bruick.
I move to adopt the changes to the agenda reflected on the screen.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to adopt or to amend the agenda as reflected on the screen. Is there any discussion about this? Is there any objection to this amendment? Seeing none, the amendment passes. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as a whole?
So moved.
Oh.
I move to remove Senator Composting and Senator Vote.
Is there any objection to removing them from the roll? Seeing none, they've been removed. Vice Speaker Bruick. Is there any objection? She has been removed. And second, is there any objection to adopting tonight's agenda? Seeing none, the agenda for tonight has been adopted. We'll now go into approval of last week's minutes. It has been moved and seconded to approve last week's minutes. Is there any objection to doing so? Seeing none, last week's minutes are adopted. We'll now go into committee reports, starting with rules with Speaker Mahoney.
So Rules Committee saw all three of the contracts that we will be seeing tonight, or all the three of the contract amendments, the SA bills that we see tonight, as well as the two bylaw bills that are under general orders, the Y bills. Essentially what committees do, just as an FYI, when they review legislation, is they may make amendments. I don't believe Rules Committee made any amendments to any of these bills, but they do issue kind of an opinion on them, whether they send them favorably or unfavorably. And the one other one I will touch on is down in special orders, the 2022-1-030SD will be potentially seating a new senator. So we met with them. So everything came out of committee favorably. Rules Committee had no major objections to any of the pieces of legislation. The only one that I will touch on is all of them were UC, save for the nominee for residence hall senator. Was not UC, but that was only because I hadn't actually written the bill for them yet. But otherwise, I believe there's no objections to the individual in question, Madison Doden. And then the amending the daily contract. There was some lengthy discussion in rules about that. Some questions about, was it sort of the first step or what that looked like. That eventually passed 5-1-0, sent favorably from Rules Committee. With that appeal.
Is there any questions for Rules Committee? Seeing none, we'll go into Finance Committee with Finance Director Claiborne.
Yeah, so I sent out the second installment of Claiborne's Cash Cow. Just a little bit more information. The Puerto Rican Student Association was tabled in committee because that event is next semester. The Philosophy Club bill was also tabled in committee because they have funding from another source. Like Speaker Mahoney said, we have 3 contracts coming up tonight with multiple bills. I did forget one in my update, and it's my bill, so that's kind of embarrassing. But it's the DIS meals that was also sent favorably. I'm excited for debate tonight, and I'm open to all questions. Regarding the Western team, we have one amendment. There was just a little bit of confusion on the registration fees. And then just one last thing. I know it's in 2 weeks, but everyone, good luck on finals.
Are there any questions for Finance Committee with Finance Director Claiborne? Seeing none, we'll move into PR Committee with Senior Director of Communications Grindsteiner.
Hello. First of all, I would just want to say thank you all for coming over to the Campanile for the headshots. They all look wonderful. I will be editing them, so they will look slightly better, but most of them are perfect, so don't worry about it. So I will get that out pretty soon once I get the photos from our photographer. This week, I have been onboarding Jamie and Maddie, our new directors, Director of Outreach and Director of Marketing. So you'll be seeing a lot from us this summer and next semester as we're starting the onboarding process. Hopefully we will be doing some goodie bags for Prep Week. We just need to go through event authorization since it is during Prep Week and events and meetings are not allowed unless if we get the exception. We are also starting conversations with organizations for fall 2022 outreach. Jamie and I have already reached out to Homecoming and After Dark to see how we can get involved with that, whether that be volunteering or financially sponsoring or whatnot. Committee heads, please look out for a text or email from me. We're gonna start this new thing where we just keep in contact about once a week during the semester so we can stay on top of our projects and whatnot. I don't think any of you really want to do meetings. Add another one in there. Be on the lookout during the summer for social media spotlights and updates. You'll probably get something from Maddie, our Director of Marketing, about that. We do have some senators being seated onto the PR committee today, so be sure to ask them some good questions, and if they're confirmed, they will be delegated some projects over the summer, and we'll be onboarding them. And just be on the lookout. There's going to be a lot of changing and transforming when it comes to PR. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Director Grensteiner? Seeing none, we don't have a diversity committee, but hopefully after tonight we'll be able to establish one. So we'll move on to SI with Senator Mays.
Hello, everybody. So we did have our last meeting on Monday. It wasn't an official meeting, so we didn't do any official business, but we did discuss the projects that we've had over the semester and the pros and cons of each of them, as well as projects that we want to do probably this upcoming fall. And we even made almost a preliminary schedule of when we think we might have these events. We also talked about potentially doing planning over summer just because we want to try to have events dispersed over the entire semester. So if you want any involvement in that, even if you're not in the committee, just let me know. And then we are seeing a couple bills to seat people onto SI. We have Senator Vo and Senator Shivraj to talk to tonight about being seated, as well as an at-large, Carlos, who was on the committee last semester as a senator, but wants to rejoin as an at-large. So I'm in favor of all of them being on the committee, and I hope you guys do agree to seat them.
Are there any questions for Senator Mays? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Local Affairs Committee with Ex Officio Garman.
Evening, everyone. Tonight, I will be seating, or you will be approving, hopefully, 5 senators to sit on the Local Affairs Committee. They had great applications. I've had great discussions with them, so I'm really excited to be able to work with them. I had my first city council meeting last night. The main topic of conversation was the urban fringe plan, which just means expanding Ames into the urban areas. So that's exciting. And then also, this is just kind of a fun fact, but if you frequently go to Wasabi Ames or the Mongolian Buffet, they did in fact fail 2 compliance tests, so they're no longer allowed to serve alcohol. So that's just a little fun fact. And then also, the primary election is on Tuesday, June 7th. If any of you are sticking around Ames and would like to work the election, it is a lot of fun. It's a paid day, so you work about 8 hours for $10 an hour, and then you also have to do 4 hours of training on a different day, so it's basically 19 hours of extra money. So if any of you are interested in that, just let me know and I can get you in contact with how to do that. But thanks.
Are there any questions for Ex Officio Garman? Seeing none, we'll move on to our final committee report, Sustainability with Director Vanderkamp. He is not here. So we will move into comments from the judicial branch.
So one, this table keeps moving back, and this is like right at my head, so not a fan. But two, we had our meeting last night. We approved the rules of the court that we've been working on all year. So that was good. We approved it 6-0 to 0. And that's all of our justices in attendance, which is an awesome number. But there are 2 justices up for confirmation tonight. I think both of them are very qualified. I'm sure you all have questions for them, but I think they are people that we really need. And there's also the election commissioner up for confirmation tonight, which they need to keep being an organization. So it'll get really interesting if you don't like them, but I think they'll do really well. So that's pretty much all I got.
Tomorrow, the Election Commission will be ratifying our new constitution. It also will be Election Commissioner Opie and myself, and also Dawson Schmidt will be retiring. It's our last meeting. Both Ross and I have served student government for 4 years in the Election Commission, so it's all nice to see all new faces, and thank you. We'd like to thank you for letting us serve these past 4 years. Dawson as well has served for 2 years, so hope you all well, and hope you are nice to our new Election Commission members that coming year. Thank you.
Are there any questions for our judicial branch? Seeing none, we'll toss it over to our student government advisor.
Hi, everyone. I would just like to say welcome to your last meeting for the semester. Just because it is your last meeting for the semester, that does not mean that you are done. A, you'll be back in August. But B, if you are working on things over the summer, my inbox is always open. You can also call me on the phone. My office, I will pick up, or please leave a voicemail. I'm so sorry, I lost my train of thought. I will keep it short tonight. Make sure you all listen to each other and listen to the people presenting. And remember why you're sitting in those chairs.
Are there any questions for our student government advisor? Seeing none, we'll go into comments from the executive branch. I know Jacob gave the student body address. Oh, we've got Chief of Staff.
Hi, guys. Unfortunately, Jacob had a personal matter he needs to go attend to, but you'll receive a Ludwig log tomorrow morning. And then finally, our really only comment is that to emphasize what Jacob said, you really need to begin working on projects over the summer. The year's a lot shorter than what you think it is. So begin the collaboration, begin reaching out to other people that you wish to work with, because we want to get a lot done this year.
Is there any comments for our Chief of Staff? Seeing none, we will start the legislation for the night. We will go into external matters, starting off with 2022-1-027 SA, amending the Student Legal Services contract with Senator Yonting.
Hi. So this contract, for background, again, we fully fund student legal services. So this includes their spaces, salary, and other expenses. Just to reiterate, they are moving offices, and since we fund them, we have to reflect that in the contract. Is there any question?
Yeah, we will now move into a period of discussion or questions about the bill as a whole. We'll start off with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask I'm sorry, I'm totally drawing a blank on your name. Michael, sorry. I'm having a moment. If you had anything you wanted to say about the bill or to explain anything, if you had anything. If not, that's fine either way, but I'd like to hear from you if you could.
Yeah, I would just say that the reason for the bill is that we're basically adding to the figures about, I forget the exact number, but somewhere around $6,000 some dollars. The initial contract that was approved by the Senate and the Finance Committee last year had for fiscal year 22, approximately $23,000, $23,187, something like that in there. I don't have the exact number. I can get it if anybody needs it. But so what happened was that had projected that we would be moving up to the 6th floor much earlier than we did. We haven't moved yet, and we're actually, our office is not going to be moving up there until June 20th. And it's our understanding that we won't be paying any additional rent until July 1st. So beginning with the fiscal year of 23, that's an additional, actually that the number there for fiscal year 22 is pretty close to the actual number. So it wasn't anywhere near the 23,000, it was less than half of that. But now for 22, it's going to be the full amount, and it did not include that. Basically, the raise in that is due to the increase in the inflation and the 3% increase that the initial contract provided for. So I think the numbers that are in here for the fiscal year for the total allocation just reflects the increase from what had been approved before for the additional square footage. And as I say, what that is attributable to is the 1/3 shared cost of a conference room. And I don't know, Senator Yonting, do you know, does this include the projected $600 and some in utilities or not? Do you know if that includes it? Or maybe Sophie knows? I'm not sure. Yeah.
No, it does not. Mason and I talked, and we wanted to keep that separate just in case it does fluctuate a little bit depending on how much is used up there, because we don't know for sure.
Yeah, and that's just an estimate anyway, so, yeah. So.
Great, thank you. I don't think that there's anything particularly controversial about this contract amendment. It's just to keep student legal services functioning. Yeah, so it's, I don't think it's anything major, so I urge you all to vote in support of it, and I yield.
Is there any question has been called for? And seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? All right, seeing no objection, we will go into voting. Being this, so it's finance and the contract amendments. We are going to go into a roll call vote. So when I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain. Starting with Agba. Becker. Yes. Bruick. Yes. Burks. Yes. Chu. Dre. Yes. Eisma. Yes. Engelken. Yes. Frencher. Yes. Hackbarth. Holiday. Yes. Kuehler. Yes. Magallanes. Yes. Mahoney. Yes. Mays. Yes. Moscar. Yes. Momini. Yes. Montalvo Martinez. Yes. Patel. Yes. Peterson. Yes. Schnepp. Yes. Shivraj. Yes. Slade. Yes. Slater. Yes. Tansey. Yes. Thornton. Yes. Topete. Yes. Vo. Yes. And Yonting. All right, with a vote of 27 to 0, the motion carries. Vice Speaker Bruick.
I move to add Senators Kohlhaas and Hurst to the roll.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, they've been added. With that, we will now move on to 2022-1-028SA, amending the daily contract with Senator Yonting. Am I wrong? Oh, never mind. We are going on to 2022-1-004F, funding the Western team with Speaker Mahoney.
I will yield my opening speaking privilege to Finance Director Claiborne.
Yeah, so the representative is here. This is the treasurer for next year for Western team. This is just one of their representatives has a chance to go to nationals. First of all, I just want to congratulate them on doing that. And then this is just for travel and for the registration fees for nationals.
Yes, so as Kit said, my name is Emily Jinks, and I am next year's treasurer for the ISU Equestrian Club Western team. We had one rider make it all the way to nationals, which is a huge congratulations for them. They had to qualify for regionals, then get first or second at regionals, then get first or second at semifinals, and now have made it all the way to finals in Pennsylvania. And so we are requesting additional funding to help with transportation costs and registration fees.
All right, the floor is open for any discussion or questions that might be had on the bill as a whole. Senator Yonting. It's been moved and seconded to add the amendments added on the screen. Is there any discussion about this? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing the amendments by unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendments pass. Back on the bill as a whole. Is there any further discussion on the bill as a whole? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we'll now go, Vice Speaker. With this being a finance bill, we will now go into a placard vote. All those in favor of funding the Western team, please raise your placard high now. All right. Thank you. And all opposed, please raise your placard. And any abstentions? Vice Speaker Bruick.
According to the Senate Rules of Order, all finance legislation must be handled by way of a roll call vote.
All right, we will do a revote and go back through a roll call. When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain. Starting with Senator Agba. Becker.
Yes.
Bruick.
Yes.
Burks.
Yes.
Dre.
Yes.
Eisma.
Yes.
Engelken.
Yes.
Frencher. Holiday.
Yes.
Hirsch.
Yes.
Kohlhaus.
Yes.
Kuehler.
Yes.
Magallanes.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Moscar.
Yes.
Momini.
Yes.
Montalvo Martinez. Patel.
Yes.
Peterson. Schnepp.
Yes.
Shivraj.
Yes.
Slade.
Yes.
Slater.
Yes.
Tansey.
Yes.
Thornton.
Abstain.
Topete.
Yes.
Vo.
Yes.
And Yonting.
Yes.
With a vote of 28 to 1 to with a vote of 28 to 0 to 1, the motion passes. We will now move on to 2022-1-028 SA, amending the daily contract for Senator Yonting.
Yes, for background, the current contract for the daily is that only if the enrollment fall below or increase above 10%, then it will trigger the provision to reduce student government payment to the daily. With what this amendment will do is that any increase or decrease in enrollment will be reflected in the amount paid to the daily up to 5%, and it will be capped at $300,000 and $380,000.
All right, with that, the floor is open for any debate or questions on the bill as a whole. Vice Speaker Bruick.
Yeah, I wanted to speak in favor of this bill. So currently, as Senator Yonting just briefly touched on, our contract currently, without this amendment, has a clause that adjusts for enrollment only when at least 10%, there's a 10% change either way on the in the enrollment numbers at Iowa State. I think that kind of has maybe a glaring problem in that we've been losing enrollment pretty consistently for the last couple of years. It's been a considerable amount of enrollment that would, aggregate over the course of several years, has gone considerably above a 10% change in effectively our funding as student government. And because those have been broken out over the course of several years and not a single one of them has reached 10%, it has not been reflected whatsoever in this contract. So the effective size of the contract, the real dollar amount has stayed the same. The effective size as a portion of our budget has considerably bloated. And I think that's a very serious problem and concern. What this amendment is going to do is actually allow us to, adjust for those changes in enrollment and hopefully avoid, while the contract may get bigger as a raw value or smaller as a raw value, either way it is being proportionate, relatively speaking, to our total funds as a student government. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. I understand and I believe there are some concerns that will be brought up on the floor tonight, but I think at the end of the day, any concerns that we may have are related to the rest of the contract as a whole and not necessarily related to this amendment in and of itself. With that, I yield.
Senator Yonting.
Yes, I would like to ask the representative from the Daily about the baseline of $340,000 as where we'll start our increase from. Can you tell us why that is the amount?
Yeah, so our current contract is kind of divvied up among other portions, but this section of money essentially goes to providing a kind of like a student fee, so to speak, for our services that we provide in addition to paying student editors. So it is going towards students, whether that be those working at the Daily or us supplying our service that is our production.
So I am in favor of the 5% provision increase and decrease, but I'm not in favor of the $340,000 as a baseline for how we will calculate the increase and decrease. Since the contract's inception in 2020, enrollment has dropped, but we have been consistently paying $340,000. So basically, the Daily have a surplus of 15%. And I do want to address some concerns or feedback some senators have, is that we can walk out from a bad deal or bad negotiation. Just because we walk away from a bad deal does not mean it will hinder any future negotiations. I will also double down and say, by walking away from a bad deal, it will help the negotiation process by telling the new administration and the Daily what we want to see from this future contract. And I don't think that the mindset, that this is the right mindset to think, given that the Daily already has a surplus. Yes, with increase in enrollment, our budget will also be proportionally increased. But those fees could be used for other or given out to other clubs and organizations that can better use those fees. And I just don't believe that giving this additional amount to the Daily will bring a marginal increase in value given the price tags. It's not saying the Daily is bad, it's just that the amount doesn't match the value. And yeah, I yield.
Senator Keeler.
Yeah, I feel like I would just like to take a moment and maybe fill everyone else in the body in who wasn't at Rules, because we did have a very lengthy debate. It was probably over half of the time we spent total in Rules. And I just want to make it clear that this is the first step in many negotiations to come. President Ludwig, Finance Director Claiborne, Speaker Mahoney, we all agree that further negotiations are in the pipe. And this is really the first step. And to make it clear, the process for these negotiations are long. The Daily and student government has to agree to them. It's not something that we can decide unilaterally. There has to be agreement between both parties. And this contract amendment here is a product of these two bodies working together. So if we don't pass this today, then we're going to have to try to work really hard in the summer to attempt to reach a new agreement. And we really are on a time crunch because count day, which is in August, which is when enrollment is counted, is what we take into account when taking the 10% or the 5%, which is in the contract, into account. So if we don't pass this amendment today, we might not be able to reach a new agreement in time to have that 5% clause in the contract go into effect. I agree with you, Senator Yonting. I do believe that we should reassess the $340,000. I just don't think right now is the time to do that. And I just want to make it clear that we will, as a body and as student government, have the opportunity to make these changes. And yeah, with that, I yield.
Senator Mahoney. There's Speaker Mahoney.
So I would just like to echo Senator Kuehler's point there that this is basically, if we don't pass this, we continue to use the original contract, and that would be the $340,000 just kind of flat. I can't imagine enrollment's going to change 10% any which way. God, I hope not. But it would otherwise require, if we were to suddenly try to amend the contract, a special meeting of Senate sometime this summer. And that's just really, nobody wants to deal with that. I don't even think it's probably tenable that we would be able to pull it together, frankly. That being said, I think this is sort of a quick amendment. This is what kind of could be negotiated since the whole talk sort of started right around spring break. So it's only been a couple of weeks that we've already seen like this amendment happen. I personally would like to say, or I personally would be in favor of this being the first of a few amendments, perhaps. That being said, the real purpose of putting my placard up was to give the podium a chance to respond if they have anything they'd like to say.
Yeah, I would just like to touch on the $340,000 number. In 2020, when our contract was taken over by student government, your budget essentially increased to account for that. So it's not necessarily, if this contract were to dissipate, it wouldn't necessarily be able to be allocated to other organizations. It was specifically designed to, as we switched from student fees for student government, to supply some type of stable support for us going forward. So this money, as far as we're aware of, was implemented for the daily and would not necessarily be able to be reallocated to other organizations. So we aren't withdrawing funds from other organizations with our contract, to my understanding.
And so one of the things I will also mention is obviously when this contract was originally signed at $340,000, I think we were at 35 or 36,000 students. We've seen a drop now to about 30,000 or 31,000 students, and that dollar amount has stayed the same. While I don't love that's the case, and if we had this clause from the first place, that wouldn't be the case. The thing is, we can't like correct the pass at the moment. I think saying no to this amendment tonight basically just kind of torpedoes perhaps future amendments, perhaps future negotiations, and puts us on a path of maybe not getting the amendments we want. I think this is hopefully the start, and so I would say let's pass it, probably save ourselves a little bit of money as enrollment probably goes down again, because that's just the projections that have been happening. And continue to have negotiations over the summer. That's part of the budget review task force purpose. And so I would like to see this pass tonight.
Senator Tansey. Vice Speaker Bruick.
One thing I also wanted to touch on, Speaker Mahoney took my chance to give you guys a chance to speak, so rats to that. But I did want to touch on another concern I have, and that I think is relatively clear that we can at least talk about. I'm not going to be President Ludwig, I'm not going to be Finance Director Claiborne, I won't be doing the negotiations directly, but one thing I did want to bring up tonight is that while this is obviously a forward-seeking amendment, and I'm very happy that it's here, and I'd love to see it pass, there is still the reality and the concern we've had that while we are adjusting from the $340,000 base number, that base number has not, the one that we're now adjusting from has not in any way taken into account the adjustments that ideally would have happened had we had this clause and just any better clause than the 10% clause we currently have in place. So I guess I wanted to ask to, our representatives for the Daily that are here, is there any, would you be amenable to, I don't want you to go too far ahead, I know you can't see the future and see on what exactly things would look like, but is there any sort of amenability toward the idea that we can try to fix some of the changes that have some of the issues and things that have arisen to kind of back solve for the bloating of the contract relative to our total budget?
So our contract obviously does allow for conversations like that to take place during any time of the year. So we're always open to discussion at any point. I would just like to add that we are already really struggling to function as is. Our editors are paid on a stipend, which is a fairly low amount and is intended to be just like a lot of money to support their living. And I'd imagine if our income from what we receive from you guys became any less, it'd be very hard for us to be able to do even a lot than that. So I'd just like to keep that in mind as we consider conversations about changing that number. We've already drastically lowered the amount of our kind of, as we say, subscription fee that we've received from the university and student government since we switched from student fees. So while I understand that $340,000 is a lot of money and we're all facing hardship, we're also facing the same hardship. So we are open to discussion on any portion of our contract. I'd just like to put that out there. And again, we can't necessarily speak too far into the future about exactly where we want to fall with that number if it was to be addressed.
Of course. Thank you for that. I guess the point I wanted to make to the body at large, but of course also to the Daily and to our administration and the executive, is that while obviously I don't want to harm the Daily's ability to operate by any stretch of the imagination, I do think that there are real concerns I've had that while we are now effectively trying to cap the bloat with this amendment, the bloat of this contract on our total budget is kind of unacceptable for me, because that means that we have to pass on the losses to our total budget that we've had to student organizations that go through our annual allocations process, and I don't really think that's fair to them. I, of course, don't want to be unfair to the Daily, but I think that there's something to be done about that hopefully can, kind of level the playing field, thin the margins a little bit, but not to the point where, student organizations that through annual allocations are getting, for lack of a better word, screwed over, and that the Daily isn't being screwed over in any way, either way. Did you?
Is there any way I could add something? Sorry, I don't mean to keep intervening.
No worries.
But I'd also like to add, when we did switch over to the new contract, student government received about what would equal to $12 a student, and the Iowa Daily then received 11 of that. So then you guys essentially received an additional dollar for every student, which would amount to roughly $30,000 for handling our contract. So there is some benefit to you guys overseeing this, I guess I would add.
Yeah, of course, and I think I think that I don't want the timbre of this negotiation, the tone of this negotiation, to be trying to come at anyone, trying to lower the effectiveness of any organization that comes through our process. I want student government to be an effective funding partner. I just really don't want that to hurt other student organizations that don't have the luxury of having contracts and having, a sort of step in installation, don't have this set allocation that comes through every time. I don't think it's fair to pass too much on to them, just like it wouldn't be fair to pass too much on to you guys as well. So I think we should vote in favor of this amendment and keep in mind that those concerns are present, but I don't think it should get in the way of this amendment. With that, I yield.
Senator Yonting.
Yes, I like to say again, just because we have a time crunch does not mean we should rush the contract. And just because it's a bad deal doesn't mean we cannot walk away from it, even though 50% of it is, I say, pretty good. And another thing that I want to say from my perspective, why I am not supportive of this bill is I want to address the probability of enrollment decreasing next year. Since 2013, we basically have been losing students. And looking at past history and using data and using that to run a regression to predict future enrollments, I have to say, based on my model, I want to base my argument that there is a 70%, almost 70% chance that the enrollment is going to increase anyways. We have been dropping from 33,000 students to almost 30,000. And the chance or the probability of that increasing next year, even by 0.5%, is quite high. Giving the daily more than $34,000 when you consider that past years enrollment has been dropped, so they have been getting the surplus, I am not comfortable with that. Not saying the daily is, not saying the daily is not worth anything. It is a worthwhile service, but the value given the price tag is just not there. I do not see it. Are you?
Senator Thornton.
Okay, so hopefully you are aware that this contract started in 2020. So in 2020, in like the fall, and then 2021, and this upcoming fall 22, that's when the payout comes. They've received the $340,000, or they will be receiving $340,000. As Senator Yonting has said, we've been steadily decreasing since like 2013. In my own personal experience, I came here in 2017 and we had 36,000 students, and now we have roughly 31,000 students. So even without like having seen his model, you can imagine that after so many years, you would start to think maybe enrollment would kick up, especially after the pandemic lasting a few years. You think maybe students would be more willing to come into school now, since we're going into a couple more years and students are like taking their masks off more. People may be willing to come back to school now. The model is making sense. The daily, having been able to take additional funds from us for the same services rendered, even though students were not coming to school, it doesn't make sense to be able to offer them the plus minus at $340,000 being that baseline, when they have now the capacity to make more than that if enrollment kicks up, because enrollment's been dropping and yet they're raking in more money from us. There's nothing wrong with being patient now, if it means not penalizing ourselves for making like a bad deal. The argument of saying that we can change this later is ridiculous, because it's coming from people who are on the committees that get the opportunity to see these contracts. These people are trying to scare you into taking this contract now because they have the ability to see it when it's being adjusted and negotiated by people who are in the negotiation meetings. Then it gets sent to Rules and Finance, and then it gets sent to Senate. But I'm going to ask the senators in the room who are not part of this process, when is it that you are actually a part of this process before it gets on this floor? When do you, as a senator, actually get a say in this contract before it's on this floor? Are you a part of the negotiation process? Are you a part of the Rules of the Finance meeting before it's here? Do you actually have a say in this? Do you have a chance to renegotiate this clause at any point after it passes this? Or are you just gonna have to wait until it comes back on the floor again? That's the most likely situation if this passes, if we get this bad deal. So I would very much urge you to vote no on this, because what's most likely going to happen is that if it passes, we're not going to see it again. We're being told, oh, we'll revisit it. Most likely we're not going to, because it's not something that's super consequential to the people that are graduating in a year or so. I'm graduating next year. I've already spent my $40 in student fees. Once I'm done, I'm done. That's most likely situation for many people sitting in this room who are going to be doing the negotiation again. I just really want to say that trying to frighten you into taking it now so that it's meeting the deadline is a really poor tactic, and I want you to stress on being patient for this, voting it down, revisiting it later, because we have a lot of time.
Senator Becker.
I just want to start by saying that I love the Daily, and I always think we should fund it to the best of our ability. This is a really great opportunity for LAS students who are journalism, that's an LAS college, and they're already losing a lot of the best professors and a lot of their funding. That said, I would agree with the enrollment model. I mean, they do send out a lot of residence hall emails saying they're reopening Linden and they're reopening Wallace because they do expect more students to come. But I mean, if the Daily's saying they can't function with less than 340,000, like that's what they're saying. And maybe we look into that and we look into why they're saying that, but I have no reason to believe that that is not the truth, and I value the Daily, and if that's what they need and we can provide it, I don't see why we wouldn't provide it. I think this is a fair contract, and if we're gonna just bring it up again, whether we vote no or yes, we might as well vote yes.
Senator Schnapp.
I would like to yield my time to former Finance Director Zastrow.
Howdy, y'all. I had been involved in the discussions with the Daily to propose this amendment in its final form. I would just like to say this is not something that's been rushed. This has come about from a few months of discussions. We have proposed this exact language to the Daily, and the two that are in front of you, you as well as Sarah, in addition to their other CEO, Tony, have all demonstrated, a favorability to this amendment. So this is not rushed. This is language that has been worked out and that has been agreed upon. And this is language that they're planning to present to their board as long as this bill passes. The next thing, I don't want this to seem like a scare tactic that people who have been making these negotiations haven't been involving everybody. The reality of negotiations is that it happens with a small group of people. The larger input of Senate as a body, I think, would be very valuable to say, we would like to see this, and this changes to the Daily contract. And then those specific objectives are then pursued by a small group of people who are able to have those small group conversations. That's just how a contract negotiation has to work. That's the shape of it. So if you're wanting to get involved on this kind of thing, the task force that's happening this summer is a perfect opportunity to have that kind of objective setting of what you want. But what we want as basically meaning this contract tracks largely with the shape of our budget. This amendment does that, and I think it does it well. This is almost the same language that we had in the proposed student engagement contract in February-ish. And that's because that contract was the best version of tracking our year-to-year budget projections with a specific contract. So that's why you're seeing almost the exact same language again. For enrollment projections, because student government projects our budget based on enrollment, we are given budget projections from the Office of the Registrar. These are confidential, and I would not want to compromise our very cooperative relationship with them by sharing those publicly because they have business interests. I don't know why, but they always ask for those to be confidential. I have negotiated this amendment with them, and I have argued for this language with those exact budget projections from the Office of the Registrar in mind. This is a model that has been relatively accurate in the past. Looking back on past enrollment projections versus actuals, it's never been off by more than 1,500 students or something like that. So I would trust their projections, and I've I proposed this amendment to the Daily with those in mind. And then lastly, the idea that if if enrollment goes up and then the Daily's contract correspondingly goes up, that's taking money away from other organizations. I would disagree with that completely. We set aside $300,000 from special projects this past year for annual allocations, saying we will take from our reserves up to this amount to supplement the big picture bill, which is where student organization funding comes from. And although we set aside up to 300,000, we said this is the mark that we don't want to surpass. We ended up taking about 243,000. So in total, it's a lot less than that. We would be able to take more from our reserves if we wanted to. As a longer term budget planning, what I would not want to see as somebody who's been very involved with the finances of student government is one contract taking up an increasing proportion of our budget. But if enrollment increases, then we'll also be getting more money to distribute to other organizations, and we correspondingly would be able to take a little more from our reserves if we needed to, if the daily did take up more of our allocation numerically. So that's my 2 cents. I would really like to see this amendment pass. This is not something that's happening quickly. If you have any questions about different accounts that we have or anything like that, any like factual patterns, then I'd be happy to talk about that if I didn't answer anything. Thank you.
Senator Schnepp, do you yield? Speaker Mahoney.
So a couple things I would like to address. One is the model that keeps getting brought up. Not to discount anybody's expertise here, but that's one person making one model. I know for a fact that despite the fact that Linden and Wilson is reopening, the Department of Residence and Dining, both of their budgets go through IRHA, so I've seen their numbers, and both of them are projecting an enrollment decrease. So major organizations on this campus are looking at a decrease, or at least they are thinking there's a decrease. And I would trust the university's expertise on that matter, because it's their business, essentially. The other thing is, Finance Director Zastro hit on it, it's a proportion. While yes, we originally, when we signed this contract, we're signing it with saying, okay, we're giving the daily $11 or $12 per student, whatever that was, and because it was a fixed contract and enrollment has decreased, that number per student has gone up slightly. That is now, this contract or this amendment fixes that. So where we're at right now is where we're fixed at proportionally. So if enrollment does jump and go up, say 2,000 students next year, and the daily correspondingly gets a little bit more money, we still reap that $35 or $30 that's still ours. So we won't correspondingly see a proportion increase. We're only seeing a pure dollar amount increase. We still will then therefore have just straight up more money, period, if enrollment suddenly goes up. While I still wish the $340,000 was a little bit less so we were staying towards that $11 or $12 per student, we're just not there yet. And so that could be some future amendments. To address another point made, negotiations do happen. They can happen in an open room, in an open meeting, and it's something I'd like to see moving forward with any of our contract negotiations. But there's such a thing as too many cooks in the kitchen, right? You can't have 35 people in all of Senate negotiating here. At the last time we were looking at canceling the daily contract entirely, a lot of us in this room, or I suppose a lot of the previous Senate, aired their grievances and said what they were unhappy with the daily. So negotiations are happening with that feedback in mind, but you can't have everybody in the room all at once saying what they want. It just doesn't work that way. And the last thing is the characterization that's saying we should pass this tonight as scare tactics, I think is entirely flawed. I think that premise itself is a scare tactic, personally. I'm actually going to yield a little bit of time to Vice Speaker Bruick since he's out of speaking privileges.
Yeah, I did want to address the discussion of scare tactics. I've been working with several of the people. I've talked to people in the daily and when we had Rules Committee meetings with them, and I've talked to President Ludwig, I've talked to Finance Director Zastro, I've talked to Finance Director Claiborne. Everyone here is operating with the best of intentions and with the goodest of faith. And I think it's completely unfair to any of them to characterize the things we're trying to do here as scare tactics, as something to override our better judgment. I think that's completely unfair to them and just completely hostile to their good faith. And I don't think that's appropriate for us to be impugning upon them. I don't feel like that's remotely the tone we should be having. If you disagree, I completely respect anyone in the body here who disagrees. I understand. I have frustrations. I have concerns with the daily contract. But I think we have to understand that we're all trying to do our best here, and that this is not some, pulling that rug out from under anyone else. This is done because we want to make things better for students, and I think that it's unfair for anyone to characterize it any other way. With that, I'll yield.
Senator Tansey.
Okay. So first, I want to say that just hearing from former Finance Director Zastro and Speaker Mahoney and the comments that they've made, so I'm a brand new senator, right? I was just elected this past election cycle, so I'm still kind of new to student government. But just hearing from what they've said, this is obviously not a rushed bill that's being pushed on student government. This has obviously been debated about in committee meetings, I'm sure, and other negotiations. And I just want to say that I will be voting yes for this.
Senator Mays.
It kind of sounds like right now that one of the biggest discussion points is that, like, you know, if we were to, like, want to renegotiate this, that it would be something that occurred over summer. I just want to hear from either former Financial Director Zastro or current Financial Director Claiborne how feasible that is. And I also just want to hear, like, your comments on it as well.
Yeah, so obviously, I obviously am in support of this bill. I met with Finance Director Zastro, President Campbell, and President Ludwig, along with the Daily and Sophie, to talk about this. If we were to, if this was to fail and to do over summer, there is a different summer editor-in-chief. So the editors-in-chief that will actually see this money for next year will not be in negotiations. And then also, for that to pass, we would have to have that before count day, and count day is at the end of August, beginning of September. So that would be a 4-month period of us having to renegotiate a whole new contract, which is less time than this amendment that we have currently. Just wanted that's just strictly timeline, no bias on that. That's just actually how it works. And then also, is it okay if I ask the Daily too? Can you kind of explain more about the difference between summer editor-in-chief and editor-in-chief for the school year, just so the Senate kind of gets that understanding?
Yeah, for sure. So we have different people are generally serving in those positions. Currently, Amber Moment will be our summer editor-in-chief, and then I will be the fall-spring editor-in-chief. And as Kit mentioned, I will most likely not be around for negotiations over the summer because I have an internship. So this would fall on our current editor-in-chief, who would not have any oversight over those dollars or input on that for the rest of the following year. So it would cause complication in terms of like discussions taking place. But again, when the school year starts, as our contract states, we can have these discussions as needed too.
Yeah, and that individual also hasn't been in any of these discussions, so that would just be a lot of catching up. Like, obviously, like, y'all are filling in, like, older senators, you're filling in newer senators, so that would be, like, us kind of rushing to fill that in, adding even more stress to that timeline. And the summer editor-in-chief and the fall-spring editor-in-chief are two different people. And it is typical that this summer editor-in-chief would serve in a managing editor role or some kind of leadership position in that fall-spring year, but those are two separate people with two separate plans, two separate staffs, and all that.
Senator Mays, do you yield? Yes. Senator Hirsch.
Hi, sorry about that. I have a question for the Daily. As enrollments decreased through the last couple of years, has your viewership gone down as well, or has that stayed relatively the same?
We have a pretty, relatively the same, proportion of, percentage of people that click on our articles, percentage of people that open our articles, because our viewership base is not just students, it's also, alumni, faculty, staff, and people just that care about Iowa State as well as like Ames locals. So our viewership has stayed pretty much the same.
But I would also like to add, though, as viewership does escalate, we do have to fund more towards our subscription towards MailChimp to send out those, our daily dose. So as enrollment increases, our expenses do actually rise.
And I think that's interesting too, because enrollment doesn't seem to affect the viewership. And I think we're all arguing about the $340,000, yet viewership has stayed exactly the same. That's why I'm in favor of this amendment, and I'm going to vote yes, because that, in my mind, makes sense. I yield.
Senator Moskar.
I would like. Oh no, this works. I would like to yield my time to the former Vice Speaker Advait.
Howdy, y'all. So I've been in student government for 3 years, have been in student government 3 years, effectively over 3 years at this point. And I was here when the first contract was negotiated, voted on. I was part of the Senate that voted on the first contract. And certainly things have changed a lot since then. A lot of good points have been brought up on the floor today, chiefly among those being the last Senate has made its views known. And I think we've started on a process that's going to see us look at this contract and take a more holistic, wide-ranging view of where we're going. I think I'm going to try and add a little context to where the last Senate was coming from as someone that was fairly involved in those efforts to get this conversation going, perhaps in more dramatic fashion than currently, but just sort of to go into that, what's been happening is for the last 3 or so years, enrollment has gone down, and our total income has gone down because each student pays in a fee to student government. Because that money has gone down, however, the dailies funding has stayed at the same level and has not reduced because of the way the contract is structured. And as Speaker Mahoney said very well, or Vice Speaker Brick, smaller clubs, smaller student organizations like Chess Club, they do not have the luxury of a contract. And so if our income is going down, our expenditures have to go down as well. And if we cannot reduce our funding to larger contracts like the daily, it is smaller student organizations that have to bear the brunt of those cuts. Now, that's not to say that's the only factor at play here, right? It's unfair if we're cutting just one side and not the other. And these are cuts that the daily would have experienced if they were directly drawing off a student fee, because the number of students would have gone down. But what I'm going to say here today is the discussion the last Senate had was multifaceted. The total number, the $340,000, is distinct from what we're looking at right now. What we're looking at right now is the 10% clause, which the former 10% clause, which would be changed by this. This would make the contract open to future changes in enrollment. And I think that's a fair, again, this is all about fairness, at least for me when I'm coming at this. And going ahead, this is a fair thing to do. The $340,000 amount is a distinct question that I think we need to look at. So in that sense, this is a step. It is a good step towards progress. It is a good step towards making the system more fair, more effective. If I was in Senate, I'd certainly be voting yes. I'm not a member of Senate today, but where I'm coming from is I would be voting yes with the clear understanding that this is only the first step of many that needs to be taken. I think Senator Qpr got it right when he said we do need to look at the $340,000 number, but that is not distinctly the question in front of us today. The question in front of us is do we want the contract to be responsive to enrollment changes? And I think the answer to that should be a resounding yes. The question that is being conflated with is the separate question of do we want the contract to be worth less? And that is certainly a question we should be looking at. I believe we should be looking at it. I believe a lot of members in the Senate think we should be looking at it. Just because we passed this amendment doesn't preclude us from making more amendments to the contract in the future. I hope that helps clear things up a little. If you have questions, I'll certainly be here and you can point those to me, even though I might not necessarily be the most qualified to answer the question, depending on what it is. And one last note, as we're going ahead, I think there's a lot of confusion here, and I had a lot of that being a senator too. And for me at least, a lot of it was a perceived lack of transparency. We still cannot see specific line items on the daily contract. I think that's something Senate and the amendment process could also look at. But I think if we are to vote yes tonight, we should do that with a clear understanding that there's a lot more steps to be taken, and this is the first correct step being taken on what is surely a long, arduous, yet fair path to take, if that makes sense. Thank you so much.
All right, before we move on, I just want to make the Senate aware that we do have 3 minutes left of the original 45 minutes to discuss this debate or this bill. But with that, moving on to Senator Thornton.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. Namely, that promising the chance to negotiate later is specifically like this clause can be misleading if we're promising it to Senate, if only because not everyone is involved. I feel like articulating that is important because not everyone's going to get the chance to actually be involved in these conversations unless they are sought out or they seek out the right people. And I'm not saying that legislation is rush. I'm saying that pressuring people to vote now in order to avoid summer is the rush. And yes, telling people that you're essentially saying if you don't vote yes on this, you're probably going to have to come in during the summer or we're going to be really rushed in the fall, that is a scare tactic. You are telling them that they need to vote yes or they're going to be penalized in some way. That's a scare tactic.
Senator Keeler.
Okay, I will try to be quick here. And I believe, Senator Thornton, you bring up a good point, is that a lot of you guys are new here and you were not involved in the negotiation process. You have not had the opportunity to present any concerns that you might have. And honestly, I'm gonna encourage each and every one of you to review our contracts. They're in our student government drive in the Govern Documents folder and Contracts folder. I would encourage you to review them. Give us your concerns, give us your questions, reach out to Speaker Mahoney, President Ludwig, Finance Director Claiborne. These are all individuals spearheading these negotiations. Your input is all valid. You all reserve the right as your elected representatives of your students to bring forward your concerns. And by reviewing our government documents and our contracts, I believe that this will also make you a better representative, which I believe should all be some of our common goals. And when President Ludwig and Finance Director Claiborne and Speaker Mahoney all say that we want to review further negotiations in this contract, I'm gonna take their word for it and give them the benefit of the doubt. I yield.
Senator Engelken, you have 24 seconds.
I move to extend the discussion or debate by 10 minutes.
It's been moved and seconded to extend debate by 10 minutes. Is there any discussion on this?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded on the objection to extending debate by 10 minutes. Please state your objection.
I understand there's a few more things we all want to say. There's little things and bits and pieces we want to get in there, and I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to that. I'm always in favor of the idea of more discussion, but I think we've run our course here. I think what's needed to be said is said. I know everyone wants to say the little things they want to say, but we are at, it's 8:20. We have a lot of stuff to do, and while obviously that alone is not enough reason to, throw out debate on a very important amendment, I don't know what more can be added to this conversation at this time. So I'm not in support of extending any debate, and I would like to move into a vote on the amendment itself.
Senator Thornton.
I think it's valid to hear what two of our newer senators have to say on this contentious bill, actually. And maybe it's not a contentious bill, but we've had a long enough debate period on it that I'd like to hear their thoughts.
Senator Becker.
Could we compromise on 5?
So we would have to vote the objection down, go back into the. Yes, we'd have to kill the objection, go back into the limit to amend it.
Yeah, never mind.
Is there any further discussion on the objection to extending debate by 10 minutes? All right, seeing none, we are going to go into a vote, and so I'm just going to explain this quick. If you vote yes on the objection, you'll be voting for the objection, and so we'll go straight into a vote. If you vote no, we will go back on to discussion of extending debate by 10 minutes. So all those in favor of going to a vote now, please raise your placard. All right, thank you. And all those opposed, same sign. And all abstentions. All right, with a vote of 23 to 3 to 1, the motion or the objection is sustained, and we will now go into a vote on the bill as a whole. With this being a contract vote, we will be doing a roll call vote. So when I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain, starting with Agba. Becker.
Yes.
Bruick.
Yes.
Burks.
Yes.
Dre.
Yes.
Eisma.
Yes.
Engelken.
Yes.
Frencher.
Yes.
Holiday.
Abstain.
Hirsch.
Yes.
Kohlhaas.
Yes.
Euler.
Yes.
Magallanes.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Moscar.
Yes.
Momini.
Yes.
Montalvo Martinez. Patel.
No.
Peterson.
Yes.
Schnepp.
Yes.
Shivraj. Slade.
Yes.
Slater.
Yes.
Tansey.
Yes.
Thornton. Topete.
Abstain.
Vo.
Yes.
And Jonting. All right, with a vote of 23, 2 to 3, the motion passes. We will now move on to 2022-1-029SA, amending the Articles of Cooperation with GPSS with Senator Yonting.
So this contract should not be controversial at all. It is just a language change to reflect what is actually happening. So as I said last time, the student fee dollar as like graduate students pay, $6 will go to the daily first, then 1/3 will go to GPSS, and the rest will go, no, 2/3 will go to GPSS, 1/3 will go to student government. And this is just to add language to reflect that.
I will now move into a period of discussion or any questions on the bill as a whole, starting with Senator Mays. Can you repeat that? Oh, Shivraj, yes. Is there any objection to doing so? Seeing none, he is removed from the roll. Senator Schnepp.
This is not relating to this bill, but I kind of just have something I want to say. I did not like how either senator that has been here for multiple years brought up a.
President, I apologize, Senator Schnapp, but we are on a motion. This is we're discussing a bill. It's germane to the discussion, so I will be calling point of order on germaneness. There is a closing comment section for me to say.
Yeah, let's keep the discussion to the bill. Is there any other discussion or question has been called for and seconded? Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we will go into a vote. We will be doing a roll call vote again. Okay, we do need a 2/3 seated senators vote to pass this, and so we still will be doing that roll call vote. So yes, no, or abstain when I call your name, starting with Senator Agba.
Yes.
Senator Becker.
Yes.
Bruick.
Yes.
Burks.
Yes.
Dre.
Yes.
Eisma.
Yes.
Engelken. Frencher. Holiday.
Yes.
Hirsch.
Yes.
Kohlhaas.
Yes.
Euler.
Yes.
Magallanes.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Moscar. Momini. Montalvo Martinez. Patel. Peterson. Schnepp. Slade. Slater. Tansey. Thornton. Topete. Bo. And Yonting. Perfect. Yeah, with a 28 to 0 vote, this motion carries. We'll now be moving on to 2022-1-003F, Funding Destination Iowa State Meals with Speaker Mahoney.
I will yield my opening speaking privilege to Finance Director Claiborne.
Yeah, as I said before, this is to subsidize $3 for the Destination Iowa State meals for transfer students and off-campus students. Again, a little background, transfer and off-campus students don't have a meal plan, and then during that time, they can't have a free meal. So what Destination Iowa State did with ISU Dining is they had the move-in rates for those students specifically, and last year's were $7 per meal, and we just projected to have an $8 per meal, $1 increase for next year. So this is with the old Vice President Decker, and I met with the Director of New Student Programs for the DIS meal plan, and we decided to subsidize $3 for the $8 so that each student will have a $5 meal, and this is basically just providing 1,000 meals for those students, and last year there wasn't as much as 1,000, but we just again overprojected just in case there was a slight increase.
We'll now move into a discussion of debates on the bill as a whole. Is there any discussion? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, since this is a finance bill, we will once again be doing a roll call vote, starting with Senator Agba. Becker. Bruick? Yes. Burks? Yes. Dre? Yes. Eisma? Yes. Engelken? Frencher? Yes. Holliday? Yes. Hirsch? Yes. Kohlhaas? Yes. Hewler? Yes. Magallanes? Yes. Mahoney? Yes. Mays? Yes. Moscar? Yes. Momini? Yes. Montalvo Martinez? Yes. Patel? Peterson? Yes. Schnepp? Yes. Slade? Yes. Slater? Yes. Tansey? Yes. Thornton? Yes. Topete? Yes. Bo? Yes. Yonting? Yes. With a vote of 27 to 0 to 1, the motion carries. We will now move on to 2022-1-007F, Student Engagement Line Item Transfer with Senator Yonting.
I would like to yield my time to Finance Director Claiborne.
Yeah, so this is partially my fault. I was given this not in the best time. Obviously, it's not student engagement's fault, but this was in my transition period for line item transfers. Again, for those who don't know, line item transfers for COA, it's no new funding. It's just moving one portion of their money to another. So as you can see in the line item transfer, they're just moving funds from Club Fest to fund other things. And in committee, since we didn't have a representative, we wanted student engagement to come just so if we did have questions in committee, those questions could be answered and just see why they are doing these line item transfers.
Is there any debate on the bill as a whole? Oh, that's right.
I move to waive first read on this bill.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to waive first read. Is there any discussion on this? Question has been called for. Second. And seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to waiving first read by unanimous consent? Seeing none, first read has been waived. Back on the bill as a whole. Is there any discussion for the student engagement line item transfer, starting with Speaker Mahoney?
I was just wondering if you could touch on kind of exactly why a good chunk of money is moving away from Club Fest and just kind of what it's going towards, I suppose.
Yeah, so this is money that is moving away from the Club Fest that happened this past fall and spring. So it's unexpended funds from Club Fest. Part of that, I'm not totally sure on the details of the budget because I don't directly oversee it, but I think a lot of it is we moved it from where it had typically been on Central Campus to the MU and surrounding, and so we had to rent fewer tents, which was nice. So we had a little extra money in the Club Fest budget.
You yield. Is there any further question has been called for and seconded? Is there any objection to vote or voting now? Seeing none, we'll go into a vote. With this being a line item transfer, being financed, we will be doing a roll call, starting with Senator Ogba. Becker. Bruick. Burks. Dre. Eisma. Engelken. Frencher. Holliday. Hirsch. Kohlhaus. Euler. Magallanes. Mahoney. Mays. Moscar. Momini. Montalvo Martinez. Patel. Peterson. Schnepp. Slade. Slater. Tansey. Thornton. Topete. Vo. And Yonting. With a vote of 27 to 0 to 1, the motion carries. We will now be moving into internal matters, general orders, starting with 2022-1-001Y, updating election law to reflect the facts on the ground with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Hey everyone, so I think this is our first bylaw bill of the new Senate. It's incredibly basic. There shouldn't be anything too controversial. Obviously, I'm open to questions. Basically, what this bill is doing is fixing the election commission's portions of the bylaws. There's a few things in there that are supposed to exist that can't possibly exist, have not existed in any recent iteration of the election commission. So we're just getting rid of those because why have them in the bylaws if they literally can't exist? And then we're adding the election commission treasurer to the bylaws. That position is currently only existed in the election commission's rules, so it's not really reflected in our bylaws. And then we're renaming the election commission recorder to the secretary because that's what they've been operating under, is that role, that name, that title, that position. There's a few other like ancillary little things to correct for the changes with those names, and with that, it's nothing too big or crazy. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, but it should be pretty straightforward. With that, I yield for discussion.
Senator Yonting.
Would you take it as a friend to adopt the first 3 amendments?
I would.
I would want to amend 10.5.1, election commissioner, to election commission.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to make the amendment of striking the ER off of the election commissioner. We'll now move into a discussion on this. Senator Yonting.
I would yield my time to Chase.
Yeah, this is just a typo, so just an ER was added on accident, so it's supposed to be election commission, so yeah.
Question has been called for and seconded, and is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we'll go into unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this amendment by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We're back on the bill as a whole. Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting on the bill as a whole now? Seeing none, unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, motion carries. We will now move into 2022-1-006Y, Increasing Green Initiatives Fund with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Hey, everyone. This is President Ludwig touched on this in his little opening thing in this program. This is a bill to increase the Green Initiatives Fund. That fund is obviously very important, but it's been too small to actually be effectively utilized. So this is again, pretty basic. Either, I guess you agree with the basic concept or not. I don't think there's too much here to it. With that, I yield for discussion.
Floor is now open if there's any discussion on the bill as a whole. Is there any discussion? Question has been called for. Is there a second? And seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, motion carries. We will now move on to special orders, starting with 2021-3-030SD, confirming the nominee for a Residence Hall Senator with Speaker Mahoney.
So this is, if you'd like to approach the podium, Madison, there's an open seat in the Residence Hall constituency, and it's up then to the constituency council to nominate somebody. The IRHA has nominated Madison Doden, so I will let her speak as to why she wants to become a senator and sort of her qualifications and such.
Yeah, for sure. So I would love to be a part of the Senate because I'm currently credit-wise junior, but this is my second year here at Iowa State. The past 2 years, I've been a part of IRHA, and I've really enjoyed being a part of that. And I've also been the president of Geoffrey Hall the past 2 years. Some reasons that I've really enjoyed holding the leadership position is just because I get to interact with the different residents, make sure that everything is going well for everyone. If there's an issue that's going on, I can try and find a solution for it. And the reason why I want to be a Senate this year is because I'm going to be an RA starting in the fall. And so I just want to still be a part of leadership. And I know how much the IRHA Senates, the Residence Hall Senates meant to all of IRHA last year. And I would love to hold one of those positions and do the same. And I have a lot of great ideas that I would love to bring to different committees. So that's why I'm here.
Is there any debate on the bill as a whole or questions for our nominee? We'll start with Senator Dre.
Hi, I was just wondering why you didn't go through the initial election process for the next year.
Yeah, so the reason why I didn't go through the initial process was because I didn't know if I was going to be an RA or not. And so I didn't know if I was going to still be on the Hall Council board and hold one of those spots because I knew I was going to live in Geoffrey and be a part of the different res life because I've enjoyed it every year so far. And I wanted to be a part of Senate, but I didn't want to give up my position at Geoffrey because I've held it for the last 2 years and I'm the only one that's held that spot as president these last 2 years, and I felt I don't know, I don't want to give up on something that I've been working so hard at, and I'd love to be a part of this. It was just kind of a conflict of interest because I wanted both, but you can't have both, so that's why I didn't initially run.
All right, I yield.
Speaker Mahoney.
So I just wanted to lend some credence to Madison. I've been in IRHA with her for 2 years now?
Yeah.
And she's always been a really great member of Parliament. She had fantastic answers and fantastic things to say in rules yesterday. I know there was a couple different people that expressed interest in the position within the residence halls, or for the residence hall nomination. I know the president of, or incoming president of IRJ had a tough choice to make, and I think personally, I think he chose right. I'm definitely going to be in favor of voting Madison. I would encourage you to vote yes as well. I'm very excited to see her hopefully join us as senators.
Senator Keeler.
Yeah, I would just like to echo that everything Speaker Mahoney said. The nominee was at Rules Committee on Monday, answered the questions very well. So I would encourage everyone to vote yes. I guess I just have one question just for the benefit of the body. If you could just speak to your time commitments, Senate is a pretty time-consuming position, so do you feel you have the necessary time to dedicate to Senate?
Yeah, for sure. So my only time constraint would just be being an RA, although I have already talked to my hall director and he knows how important that this is to me, and he said that it'd be something that he'd be able to easily work around and still have all my duties be taken care of.
Okay, thank you. With that, I yield.
Senator Momini.
I have a question. You spoke about a couple of ideas and projects that you wanted to bring to committees. First time seeing you, from what other people say, you sound great. Could you just elaborate on those ideas and projects? Thank
For
you.
sure. So some of them are like just some like ideas that I like want to help out with, and like some stuff that I know that Student Initiatives is working on. But something that I really care about is like recycling on campus, because that's a huge issue, especially in residence halls. I know that a lot of residents don't really enjoy having to walk the extra few feet, even though it's not that far, to like go recycle different products. So like something that I would love to talk to like the recycling like here on campus is try and have like recycling like inside like the dorms also, and or just any ideas that are like feasible and are legal to have. Other ideas that I want to really like help out with is like I know that kind of like the mental health issues are not going the best right now, just because I know that it's hard to get people like to set up a meeting. I know that it's not always easy because it can take a few months to get in. I currently have been kind of looking into that. For like one of my like projects for like a class, we have to come up with solutions. So I have like some ideas on like how to like maybe like set up like a mentor or like someone that you could like have like a texting like message with that would be a therapist, or trying to get something like that here on campus I think would be really beneficial. Some other ideas I just really want to like help with, I know how I'm like drawing a blank on what it's called, but I know that a lot of like you can donate like flex meals and stuff like that, and I know that's something. It's like give a swipe, there it is, and that's something that I really want to help out with, because I know like personally like I have a lot of like flex meals that go unused, and I know the limit's only 5 to donate, and they only do that every so often. So I'd love to like help that program like get going so that they can donate more and help in different ways like that. So that's what I've thought of so far.
Senator Eisma.
There we go. I would just also like to express my approval towards Madison. Excuse me. I've worked alongside Madison through Joffrey Hall Council for the past semester and a half, and she has been a hard worker, has put up with a lot of semantics and issues that we have had in Joffrey Hall. And to kind of just summarize what I'm saying is, she's been the glue that has been holding Joffrey Hall together. And to me, as well as Joffrey's RAs and staff, she has definitely proved her worth and knows what she's getting into. And so I'd urge you to say yes to yes. I yield.
Is there any further discussion on the bill as a whole? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Saying none, congratulations, Madison. This bill passes. We will. So Madison staying here. We are going to have our Chief Justice swear you in.
Repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly swear or affirm
to execute the duties of my position
to execute the duties of my position
as prescribed in the Constitution
as prescribed on the Constitution
and laws of the government
and laws of the government
for the benefit of all students.
for the benefit of all students.
Congratulations.
Madison, please find yourself a chair. We will now move on to 2022-1-031 SC, confirming a Supreme Court nominations with Speaker Mahoney.
So I believe there's a couple open seats on the Supreme Court. President Ludwig, who's no longer here, has nominated 2 individuals to fill those seats. I will now ask them to approach the podium.
Is there any question? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and speak, sorry.
Yeah, is it okay if I just give a little introduction? Okay. Hi, my name is Tiffany. I'm a freshman at Iowa State studying biology with a minor in ethics on the pre-law track. I hope to go into medical malpractice law or patent law. I'm currently involved in Women in Pre-Law Club on campus, and I serve as the public relations chair there. And then I'm also involved in a few other smaller community service groups on campus. I'm looking to get involved in student government because I am really passionate about anything policy, anything sort of law related, and I think the judicial branch would be a great way for me to get involved with that. I spend a lot of my free time when I'm not at school judging mock trial tournaments back home, helping coach mock trial, and giving students direction while they're trying to figure out policy and review documents. So yeah, I think that would be a great place for me to get involved here on campus. I am fine answering questions now, or I can let the other nominees speak too. Introduce yourself.
So hey everybody, my name is Kaylee Kleitch. I'm a freshman this year, majoring in agriculture and rural policy studies with a double minor in political science and environmental studies. So with that, I'm not quite sure what I want to do, but I am very interested in policy and law. I don't have a ton of experience in the judicial branch, but I would love to gain that experience and get to know it. Yeah, I kind of got interested in this position on a travel course I took to Costa Rica. Alex was there with me, and he kind of convinced me to run. So that is why I'm here tonight.
Is there any questions for our nominees or discussion as a whole? We will start with Senator Keeler.
All right, thank you guys for coming out tonight, and I appreciate the wait. I know we've been at it for a while now. But I guess my question for both of you is if you could sum up what the primary role of the Supreme Court is and how you believe you would be a good fit for it.
So from what I understand, the Supreme Court really, it settles disputes, it looks over various documents and, I lost the word, but it just makes sure everything looks like it should and is written as it should be. I believe that I have the patience to look through those documents and kind of analyze all of that. And yeah, I guess I can let her go.
So that's pretty much about the extent I know as well. I also understand it is settling disputes, but also a lot of going over the bylaws and constitution of the student government. I enjoy going over documents. I love reading and writing and would love to help critique and get feedback on that as well.
All right, thank you both for answering that question. And with that, I yield.
Senator Holliday.
I just want to speak on behalf of Kaylee. So we've known each other for about a little over a year now, and she is genuinely one of the most detail-oriented, dedicated person that I know. She is in our professional ag sorority with me. We've gotten to know each other through FFA, by confirming her into this position tonight. We will not regret it because I know that she is a quick learner and will do the absolute best of her abilities to fulfill her position. And with that, I yield.
Senator Patel.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to talk about Tiff for a minute. She lives in my dorm, and I talk to her occasionally, and I think she'll be a great new Supreme Court nominee, since I know that she's very patient when it comes to. She's great at learning new subjects, and she has the moral courage and high ethics to be a great nominee. Thank you.
Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Congratulations, you two. This motion carries. Our Chief Justice will now swear you in.
So, repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm to execute the duties of my position as prescribed in the Constitution and laws of the government for the benefit of all students. Congrats.
With that, we'll now move into 2022-1-032SC, confirming a nominee for the Director of International Student Experience with Speaker Mahoney.
So we're getting into our last director nominations that we'll be confirming. So the International Student Experience Director, or Director of International Student Experience, is a relatively new position. It was created last year. They're tasked with working on the international student experience. It's kind of what's on the tin. So I'll ask the nominee to come forward and kind of tell us a little bit about themselves and why they're interested in the position.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arlene Garrick. I'm currently a doctoral student in the department, the awesome department in the College of Human Sciences. I am or was an international student for a while. I've traveled extensively and have worked with students, international students as well as immigrants. I worked as an employment specialist with immigrants while I lived in Canada. And I have worked extensively with international students as an international internship coordinator. One of the things I found out as an international student was that there was not much integration of international students at the university that I was. And students would come and find that they are not part of a community. I'm currently in the Peak Performance Leadership Program, where I share the spotlight with several international students. And in discussions that we have had, they have indicated that one of the things was that transition for them was very challenging. It was an exciting time, but it was also a challenging period. And they didn't feel that they were part of a community. So as director, I would like to put in place not only plans for those individuals, but also to sensitize everyone about the cross-cultural differences and how those differences can impact transition for students. Put in place policies and guidelines that will help anyone else coming after I have departed, that this is something that they can be guided by and add their own input to making the experiences for internationals a holistic experience, not just getting on campus, but keeping tabs on them and putting in place different segments to help them with the transition process itself. Thank you.
Are there any questions for our nominee or discussion on the bill as a whole? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Congratulations, Arlene. This motion carries. We will now move into 2022-1-039SC, confirming a nominee for the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Speaker Mahoney.
So already looks like she's on her way up, so I'll ask the nominee to approach the podium. Basically, Director of DE&I works on projects related to that, tackling issues of DE&I across campus. They chair the DE&I committee. They're kind of our main point of contact and main force for that. So if you'd like to just kind of speak on yourself and why you were interested in the position.
Of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Milosky. I hope everyone's having a good hump day, or night now, I guess. I'm currently a second-year psychology major minoring in African American Studies on the pre-law track. A little bit of my previous experiences. I'm currently a member of Delta Gamma, where I serve as the Director of Social Awareness. So within that position, I do a lot of stuff regarding programming, education, and resources for new and current events. And then I'm also part of the DEI committee for CPC, which is the College Panhellenic Council. So essentially, I do what I'd be doing here, but just for Greek life. So we help give out newsletters, resources, presentations, anything regarding that. So for that position, I'm explicitly a director of education and resource, where I oversee 12 to 14 members, which I feel like helps me for this new committee in terms of like planning and things in that fashion. I'm also part of the NAACP Collegiate Chapter here, where I'm the student government liaison, which I feel like will also be beneficial in terms of building bridges in community, because I feel like that's something that's sort of lacking, and I think long-term is important to do.
Is there any questions for our nominee or discussion on the bill as a whole? Question has been called for and second. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Congratulations, Mary. Motion carries. We will now move into 2022-1-038SC, confirming a nominee for Election Commissioner with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Cody, could you approach the podium? Thank you. So election commissioner is the person who runs election commission. You know, they're pretty important, super important. So asking good questions. I know election commission is incredibly important to myself, and our election process is probably one of the more important little background processes we have. So, you know, go all out. I yield for discussion.
Should I start with an intro? You're good. So I'm Cody Nieper-Burris, like it says in the bill. So I was nominated, I guess, to election commissioner in this position. It'll be a step up from my role as public relations committee chair that I'm currently in and was appointed to by the election commission. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, I guess. So any questions, go ahead.
All right, we'll start off with Speaker Mahoney.
So there has been some, talk about some. I'm just curious if you have any changes that you'd like to see happen to election commission or election processes. The situation that exists. If you touch on any changes that you'd like to see as election commissioner.
Yeah, I guess there aren't specific changes that I would like to see, but I am open to hearing everyone's opinions. I think a discussion is to be had about the election code and the election system as a whole, and any changes that people have, I'm open to. But of course, I helped the rest of the election commission this year write in our current changes, including the one that you just passed today. So any ideas about what you'd like to see change? I would love to hear it. Open ear as always. But there aren't specific changes that I can think of that I would want to implement. I just look forward to improving it as much as possible.
Senator Keeler.
I guess my question for you is, what would be your main goal while acting as election commissioner during your term?
Yeah, I would want to help all the other members of Election Commission running our subcommittees, so debates, violations, and PR. Of course, I was running this one this year, so that one's a little closer to my heart, but I also worked closely with the other two. The most important part is having a successful election cycle, making sure that we are able to run it smoothly, and of course get people in these seats as well as the executive seats next year. Yeah, so the primary role of the commissioner would be assisting other members as well as organizing and leading the organization and working directly with the ballot software system and the organization that runs that for us. That would be my primary role during the election cycle.
All right, thank you for that. I yield.
Senator Yonting.
Yes. Do you see any inefficiency in the election process?
I do think that there are improvements to be made. I haven't thought of any specific things myself, I suppose. But like I said, I'm open to any and all ideas that you guys have and how we can implement those. I did talk a little in my interview with Chief Justice Cecil about that we have a Facebook page that includes other election commissions and student government members from other universities. And I would like to be able to collaborate with students at other universities and maybe learn from them on ways that we can improve or maybe help them improve their system. So that would be my plan for this summer, at least.
So as in your previous role, what have you improved?
Yeah, so as a PR chair, I was able to dramatically increase the amount of social media posts that we were putting up. So I started doing meeting updates when we had significant things coming through, making sure that everyone was aware of what Election Commission was doing to the best of my ability, as well as starting on Election Day tabling in the Memorial Union to hopefully boost student engagement and student voting. And I'd like to further implement those. That was kind of a last-minute idea that we had, and so I'd like to put some more preparation into that and help the PR chair of next year do so.
IU, call the question.
Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we will go into a vote. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations, Cody. This motion carries.
Thank you.
We will now move into 2022-1-033 SG, seating senators to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Mays.
All right, so we are seating two senators potentially tonight. Sundar Shivraj, who had to leave early, but I do have a little blurb from him that I will read, and then Lena Vo as well, if you want to approach the podium. I'll read Sundar's little blurb first before I have Lena speak, just to speak on his behalf. So he wrote, "Hello everyone, my name is Sundar Shivraj and I am a newly elected off-campus senator. I am a junior in computer science with a minor in data science. I am passionate about student experience and making it the best experience possible, and I believe the best way to do that is through the events and activities on and around campus that work to promote fun activities for students while also advocating for them and promoting resources available on campus. In terms of my qualifications, I am the current president of my house, I am the founder and president of the Escape Room Club, and I am also working with a team of students to start a new mental health organization on campus in fall 2022 called The Vibe. So I am very familiar with planning and running events for students on campus. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I cannot wait to hopefully be a part of this fantastic committee." So Lena, if you want to just talk on like your interests.
Hi, my name's Lena Vo. So I am very interested in joining the Student Initiatives Committee. So this recent Monday, I helped with the Woofs and Wellness event, and I really liked that. I helped with passing out Zosha plushies, and I really liked seeing the facial expressions of people walking past, and I could tell that they felt like they were being seen by student government, and they felt recognized. So I feel like our whole point is to have people know about us, but I also think it's very great that we get to make an impact on other people. So I think Student Initiatives is a great committee to be in and to make the most impact for our student body. We talked about me and Ella being part of a sub-PR committee, and I'm qualified for this position because in another student organization I'm in, known as Color of Love, I basically promoted all of our social media posts, and I still do that, and we also promoted about running for student government, so we reached out to other marginalized groups in campus, and we promoted other students of color to join student government and to be confident in joining. And I also sparked interest in one of our projects because I got to sit during our last SI committee meeting. I sparked interest in working on a project over the summer for transfer students back to school. And I really wanted to be part of this because one of the jobs I have right now is I'm a conversation club leader for IEOP students. So they are basically transfer students. They're international students that came here to Iowa State, and they're in a English English second language learning program. And so I work with international students every day, and I kind of understand where they may feel displaced sometimes. And what I do is I basically show them around campus. I look up events and things going on, and every week we do stuff together and build a sense of community. So I feel like this would be really fun. And I'm a hard worker, and I like to commit my time to things that make me passionate. So.
All right, we'll move into a period of discussion. We'll start with Senator Slade.
Hi, yeah. I just want to speak on how qualified Lena is. She would be a great addition to Student Initiatives Committee. Yeah, she's just extremely dedicated. She's already been helping out with projects in our last meeting, so I would really encourage you all to vote yes.
Speaker has been moved and seconded to vote, or to move to a vote now. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, I will move into a vote. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations, Lena and Sundar. This motion carries. We will now move on to 2022-1-034 SG, Seating an At-Large to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Mays.
Yeah, so this is just now an at-large instead of a senator being seated. It is Carlos, who was formerly on the committee when he was a senator, but was removed when he was no longer a senator. So now he still wants to be a member of SI, and I'll let him speak on his qualifications and interests and everything for people who don't know him yet.
So, my name is Carlos. I was a senator last year. I was in student initiatives. I'm currently holding no position within Iowa State locally. So, with all due respect, I want to be an at-large just because I'm going to be bored. And because my main position right now is just president of a national organization, so a lot of my work is just going to be virtual, and I don't want to just sit in a room all day speaking with people diplomatically. And I want to do projects, and I've had a lot of experience doing events. Some experience I have, I was VP of events for the Engineering Student Council for 2 years. I was president of that Engineering Student Council. I've been a part of multiple organizations within the College of Engineering that put on multiple events. I'm pretty good at putting on large-scale events, and I planned and developed an entire national conference in a span of a month. So I'd say I'm pretty good at holding events.
Yeah, we'll move into a period of discussion. We'll start with Senator Yarnting. Is there any question has been called for and seconded? Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations. This motion carries. We'll now move on to 2022-1-035 SG, seating senators to the Local Affairs Committee with Speaker Mahoney.
I will yield my opening speaking privilege to ex officio Garmin.
Hello, everyone. If the five of you want to approach the podium, they will just share with you a little bit about why they want to be a part of the committee. They all had amazing applications. I've chatted with all of them. They have great ideas, so feel free to ask any questions, but I'm really excited to work with them.
Okay, everyone, my name is Rachel, and I am currently a senator here, obviously. I was currently elected on SciRide, so that's kind of why I wanted to join local affairs. I think it's good to bring both those organizations together, making sure that I can go ahead and put my best foot forward for SciRide and just overall the local community. One thing that I really want to address just overall is that there's a lot of ice usually on the sidewalks around campus, especially like the external parts where there's like a lot of roads and stuff, and it's hard for freshmen to get around and like walking to dining halls and stuff. I know I personally struggle with that, so that's something I really want to improve on locally with the city and Ames. So yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Preston. I haven't
I'm new to Senate and everything, so like I've done nothing in the past, like within student government, but I've done some internships and some other stuff. So I have some experience working with local governments. This past summer, I interned with a civil engineering company where like 90% of our projects were contracted through counties, through cities, and so I had a lot of experience working with those officials and people of those residencies that our projects were impacting, and that was a lot of fun. And then I've also ran my own business for like 5 or 6 years within my own hometown, and so that's been fun to kind of do work within my community through that. And one specific interest of mine with local affairs is in regards to rental contracts. Pretty much everybody at some point throughout college like has some sort of rental agreement, rental contract. And I actually had a pretty bad experience this past fall. And so if like my friends and I weren't kind of in the know about housing codes and such, we wouldn't have been able to get out of that. Also, little hats off to the student legal services guy because we consulted with him. They are valuable, really. And so, yeah, that's why I want to be on local affairs.
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm a recently elected off-campus senator. I'm interested in joining the local affairs committee for several reasons. I'm extremely passionate about public service, as well as building a strong relationship between the city, the county, and the university. In addition to my passion for public service, I've had a number of experiences in Iowa's state government, as both an intern and working on several political campaigns, both of which have given me a unique insight into how our state and local governments operate, insight that I plan to utilize while working for both the local affairs committee as well as student government as a whole. If confirmed, I would look forward to sitting in on city and or county committee meetings and building those relationships with local officials, as well as getting more involved within the Ames community itself. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chukwunenya Obioto Agba. You can refer to me as Obi Agba. I'm a sophomore majoring in political science, minors in computer science and philosophy. I'm interested in joining the local affairs committee. As being a college town, it is important to build the relations between the people of the city, the county, and the university. Being a new committee, this serves as an excellent opportunity for us to cooperate with local governments to continue building an interconnected community for all. We can do this through fostering a culture of civic engagement through simple and effective means that demonstrate our desire for transparency, diverse citizen involvement, and inclusion of people from diverse backgrounds. I guess a bit of my experience as we're running short on time is I have been able to talk with local Iowa senators such as Kornbach and his constituents in regards to the LSA budget cuts, as they were also interested in what they should do in regards to that. And one of the few ideas I have for this committee is furthering the goal of mental health. Iowa State suffers from lacking mental health services. Iowa State only has a handful of professional mental health workers, I believe 8, correct? And they have very little diverse representation that can account for the unique experiences of many of our Black, Indigenous students of color. In my internship, we educate and talk with Iowan Black youth, and most, if not all, of their mental health services have inadequate care, as issues that they face do not are not in the scope of what the care providers know or understand, resulting in providers Googling what should be done for issues and providing poor help for those in need. This is extremely important to me, as I believe all students should have the right to seek mental health with the utmost care. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kushi Patel. I am the senator for Freddie Core, and I'm really interested in joining local affairs because in my hometown in Branson, Missouri, I helped a lot with canine dogs and Branson's PD. And this summer, I'm going to go back home, and I'll be helping volunteer and get funding to have more canine dogs and training for canine dogs in Branson. And I've really enjoyed my time working with the local PD in Branson, and I hope to continue working for helping the local government here in Ames. And I want to join mainly because I want to get more exposure to local government here in Ames, and since this is a new committee, I want to help develop this committee and keep working on it, because I plan on being on this committee for multiple years until I graduate and making it its best face. Thank you.
Now enter into a period of discussion. Senator Yonting.
I move to adopt the amendments reflected on the screen.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the amendments reflected on the screen. Is there any discussion on this? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objections to passing this amendment by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendments pass. Back on the motion as a whole.
Call a question.
Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Congratulations, you four. This motion carries. We'll now move on to 2022-1-036SG, seating senators to the PR committee with Speaker Mahoney.
I will yield my opening speaking privilege to Senior Director of Communications, Grensdater.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome up the 5 senators to the podium. These senators were on the PR committee last term, and they all did a phenomenal job. They all had great and fresh ideas, and I've already met with them about some future ideas that we have for next semester, and I believe that they're all very well qualified. Please ask them good questions.
Hey everyone, my name's Jennifer. I am currently a freshman, triple majoring in ag education, international ag, and speech communications. So with that being said, I love agriculture and I love speaking, so public relations. Today, I actually spent 6 hours running around campus filming a video for a project I am doing. So this summer, I am also going to be serving as the Professional Agriculture Students Public Relations Chair. So I'm in charge of all of our social media. Last semester, or I guess last term, I served as an at-large on the Public Relations Committee for Student Government. It's something I really enjoy, and I know we had some issues last term, but I think with thorough communication and dedication this term we will be able to work through it all, as well as being open-minded and bringing all of our new ideas to the table to work through them as a whole.
Okay, hi, my name's Rachel. I'm up here again. I am wanting to join PR committee because I was on it last semester as a senator, and it was just so much fun. It pushed me out of my comfort zone, made me really get used to talking publicly, having to write stuff for like formal views for the rest of the campus to see. So that's kind of why I want to do that, and I just kind of want to help bring with Jamie and getting outreach out there. I think that's something that we could definitely work on, and especially since we have the whole year to work on this, I think it's really important. So, yeah.
I'm Hannah. My major is public relations, so PR is super important to me. I have hopes into going to government relations, which is why I'm on student government. I was an at-large last year, and that's the reason why I'm standing here today, is because everyone pushed me to be here. I think it's really important that all 5 of us were on PR last year, because I feel like as we had issues last year, it's really nice that we'll be bringing back the experience we had last year to like grow and involve. And I'm also on Homecoming Central, which I know Christian talked about, like getting involved with homecoming and stuff like that in our outreach. So I think that's also really important. So yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Madeline Becker. I'm a freshman double majoring in economics and political science. My experience for this role involves doing marketing for a real estate firm last summer, as well as creating the mailouts for a local law firm in my hometown. I was also in PR last year. So the first semester I was an at-large, and then the second semester I was a senator. We all agree that PR needs a little spice, it needs a little revival. Some of the ideas we've had would be to try to take over, you know, like a halftime or like a quarter break of a football game or a basketball game and give out t-shirts or give out just like things that people could have with student government on it. Get our name out there more than just posting, but posting is important, and I also enjoy content creation. Last year for student government, I was in charge of the Fun Fact Friday post every week, and I really enjoyed doing that, and I would like to do that again.
All right, I'm going to keep it short because it's already been echoed in the 4 people before me, but my name is Quentin Slater. I'm a freshman double majoring in agricultural communications and agriculture and rural policy studies, and I think we can all agree there were problems on PR, we've addressed them, and we are ready to tackle them. Along with Christian and Jamie and Maddie, I look forward to working with them pending confirmation, and just hope that you all are in favor.
With that, we'll now open it up. Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Congratulations, you 5. This motion carries. We'll now move into 2022-1-037SG, seating senators to the Finance Committee with Speaker Mahoney.
I will yield my opening speaking privilege to Finance Director Claiborne.
Yeah, so these are the last 2 senators for Finance Committee. Their interviews were very, very outstanding to me. We had really good discussion about what I kind of want to do as Finance Director next year, and I like their opinions on the stuff I had, so if you 2 want to go to the podium, and I hope you all confirm them.
Hi, everyone. I came up here earlier, and I'm interested in joining Finance Committee because I was a part of it last year, and it helped me improve with so many things. Last year, like one of my biggest things was public speaking, and here I am able to like talk to people and look around. Last time I was on the podium around this time, I walked out because I was so scared to talk, and this wouldn't have been possible without being able to present bills through Finance Committee. So, and I've learned a lot about just Finance Committee in general, and I hope to continue applying that this year. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Nick again, new UROC senator. I didn't say this before, but I'm a political science major. All right, so I am interested in joining Finance Committee for several reasons. As President Ludwig mentioned in his remarks earlier tonight, student government and Iowa State University as a whole are at a pivotal moment. My main goal will be, on the Finance Committee, will be to look into student government contracts and budgets to address any unnecessary funding issues in an effort to avoid any rises in student fees. Another crucial goal that I have being on the Finance Committee is promoting clarity for student government student organizations that are funding eligible. In order to do this, and I'd have to talk to Finance Committee members and the Finance Director, obviously, but I'd be happy to personally go to various club meetings on campus and kind of give a presentation on, what student government is and how they can receive funding if they're funding eligible. Or just to be like that face for student government. I'm also very passionate about student government finance. With the potential for budget cuts mentioned earlier, I would like to ensure that student government remains financially viable long after my term as a senator ends, which I will be a senior this upcoming year. And I am also looking forward to helping all of you on your own projects that you campaigned on. Thank you.
The floor is now open for any discussion. We'll start with Senator Yonting.
I move to adopt the amendments reflected on the screen.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the amendments on the screen. We'll now move into a period of discussion on these amendments. Called a question has been called for. Is there a second? And seconded. Is there any objection to voting now on these amendments? Seeing none, unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing these amendments by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, these amendments are passed. We are back on the motion as a whole. Just the amendments passed.
Call the question.
Question has been called for and second. Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, now congratulations, this motion passes. All right, with that was our last bill of the night because there is no new business. So we'll start with closing announcements. If anyone has a closing announcement, just please raise your placard. We'll start with Senator Yonting.
Yeah, just a quick one. I just want to make one last announcement. Just because you are a new senator does not mean you have to listen to previous people in power. You can make your own decision yourself. That's it.
Senator Schnapp.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk really quickly. I don't think that it was okay that the word scare tactic was used today. I think that every single senator can have their own opinions about the bill, and they can bring whatever point they want to the board, and as long as it's not political. But because we talked about that last Senate, but not last Senate, last term. But it's pretty much like you guys can all bring up whatever you want to say, and you should have no fear of that. So I think we should try to not use those words next time in Senate, just overall. So yeah.
Is there any further closing announcements? If not, we'll go back to the back table if there's any.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk more about everything. Obviously, as we have listened, there are only a few people on conversations because of legality. The Daily is a business, so they have their own private things they have to follow. And they also are competing with the Ames Tribune, which is something that people should know is they are a free newspaper on campus to students, while the Ames Tribune is also a newspaper that students can have. But if you do have any concerns, I am obviously free and open to conversation. I obviously make decisions not just for me, but for the whole student body, and you are all representatives of the student body, so I'm open to all conversations. Obviously, those conversations at final need to be a small group of people, but the initial conversations and voicing your own opinion shouldn't be silenced until we go to Senate, because everyone has their own voices, everyone has their own opinions. But I just want to say the debate was good tonight. Again, good luck everyone to finals, and I'm excited for next year.
All right, Vice Speaker Bruick.
Hey everyone, I am going to do my usual thing and channel Speaker Emeritus Weathers. Great debate tonight, big bills passed, important stuff. Some of our first actual outward-looking external matters, always really good, exciting to see. I don't have too much other than that. I do have one personal announcement I'd like to let you all know about. The Iowa State Choirs and Orchestra are having a concert this weekend, Saturday at 7:30 at Stevens Auditorium. I'll be in it, I'll be performing, I'll be singing. It's going to be a great time. It's totally free. So if you're looking for something to do on a Saturday night and you like cool music, come out. It's going to be a great time. Everyone in choir is awesome, just singing great. So I'm really excited for that, and I hope you guys can come join us in enjoying that. I cannot think of anything else, so I'll give it over to Speaker Mahoney.
I know we've been here long, so I'll keep it quick. I apologize for the long Senate meetings. Hopefully they'll be a little bit shorter as we get into the thing. All the confirmations and everything. Congratulations on making it through your first session. This is the last Senate meeting of the semester, obviously. We'll be meeting, I'm not exactly sure if we meet the first week or the second. I'd have to double check that when we get back. But right before there will be a student government retreat. I'm not sure on the dates on that. Keep an eye on your inbox. We'll have more information about that, but it'll be, Sophie's mostly planning it with help from other of the chief officers. It's kind of a great bonding experience for everyone. We'll go over some more, parliamentary stuff and student government, and teaching you guys about more of how our finances work and everything. But it's generally just going to be a really fun time. Over the summer, my email's still going to be open. Sophie's expressed that as well. So please feel free to reach out to me if there's anything you want to work on, anything you want to talk about. I'm always down to talk with people. We are going to be working on bylaw rewrites this summer. The Budget Review Task Force will be meeting this summer, some election code stuff. So we'll still be working on some stuff this summer. I'll definitely be reaching out to people and, just kind of throwing things out there to hear from people. The two things I did want to touch on with tonight, just a reminder for everybody, if call the question isn't an end to debate. So if there's things you want to talk about and somebody does call the question, you can object. And more often than not, people just withdraw. So if you have things to say, please always feel free to object and try to say them. The other thing with that, move to adjourn, go Cyclones.
Second.
Is there a second? It has been seconded. The first session of the student government has been adjourned.